Chapter 2095. Lu Baishuang could not believe that Ji Tianqing could severely injure Song Yu, a rank 7 martial sage. This was absolutely impossible. However, she did not believe that Song Yu would show mercy and spare Ji Tianqing's life. On the way back to Sky Lion Pass, she had been thinking and analyzing this matter. She was in a dilemma. Ji Tianqing pretended not to see her expression and silently thought about his next plan. After returning to Sky Lion Pass, Ji Tianqing rested in the Commander-in-Chief Palace for 2 days. 2 days later, he had recovered to his peak state and led the 300,000 elite troops out. This time he wanted to destroy the 300,000-strong demon race troops at Flying Bear Mountain and achieve complete victory. However, when he reached Flying Bear Mountain, he realized that the demon race troops had already retreated. On the magnificent Mount Furious Bears, the only things left were the dilapidated walls and the burning fire that had never been extinguished. It was obvious that the demon race troops had already retreated. Before they escaped, they moved away all the military equipment and resources and even burned down the buildings in the camp. Even if they were defeated and escaped, they were not willing to let the human race take advantage of them. Ji Tianqing executed a secret technique and found out that the demon race troops had escaped 2 days ago. Now that 2 days had passed, the 300,000-strong demon race troops had already left Sky Lion Pass. Even if Ji Tianqing led the troops to chase after them, he might not be able to catch up. Even if he caught up, it would be half a month later, and they would have left Luoshui Holy Kingdom's territory. Ji Tianqing pounced on empty air and was naturally a little depressed in his heart. However, this result was within his expectations and there was nothing to be angry about. He took a tour around the Flying Bear Mountain, then returned to the Sky Lion Pass with 300,000 elite soldiers. After returning to Sky Lion Pass, he let the soldiers rest in their barracks and entered the Commander-in-Chief Palace alone to look for Lu Baishuang. Lu Baishuang was in the study room. She sat in front of the table and was deep in thought. Ji Tianqing came in front of her and shouted softly, "Lu Baishuang, I have something to tell you." Lu Baishuang's thoughts were interrupted, and she hurriedly raised her head to look at him. "You are back so quickly? It seems that the army of demons in the Flying Bear Mountain has already fled?" Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "You guessed right. This is also expected." Lu Baishuang nodded slightly, stared at him, and asked in a low voice, "You came to find me now. Is it to tell me that you are leaving?" Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. "That's right, you're really smart." Lu Baishuang was praised, but he wasn't happy at all. With a desolate expression he said, "How could I not guess? Long ago, you told me that you came to Heavenly Lion Pass to expel the demon army. You said that you were pressed for time and couldn't afford to waste any time." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "That's right. Expelling the devil army and saving the north of the Luo River God country is my mission. Now that the mission has been completed, of course I have to leave. The Heavenly Lion Pass is already safe. Next, you just need to send the army to continue extending northward, and you will be able to reclaim the lost land. Even if you encounter some remnants of the devil race, you can easily deal with them. The people of the White Frost Empire will no longer have to live in fear and be forced to leave their homes. However, the other empires are still fighting with the devil army, and they are still in an abyss of suffering. I have to rush over to help as soon as possible to avoid more casualties." Lu Baishuang listened quietly, and when he finished, he slowly got up and bowed to him. "Ji Tianqing, on behalf of the 3 billion people of the White Frost Empire, this emperor sincerely thanks you. No matter when, the White Frost Empire will always open its doors to you, and we will always welcome your arrival." Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said, "Many thanks for Holy Emperor Baishuang's kindness. This Ji will take his leave now, and we will meet again someday." He cupped his fists to Lu Baishuang and turned to leave. Lu Baishuang was stunned for a moment, and couldn't help but shout, "Wait!" Ji Tianqing turned to look at her, raised his eyebrows and asked, "What's wrong? Is there anything else?" Lu Baishuang hesitated for a moment, then gathered her courage and asked, "If you leave now, I don't know when we will meet again. Don't you have anything you want to say to me?" Ji Tianqing thought seriously for a moment, and said solemnly, "No." Lu Baishuang's expression suddenly stiffened, and her eyes flashed with deep disappointment. However, she immediately recovered and said with a smile, You are still not serious. Forget it, you can leave now. This emperor will report the matter of you helping the Heavenly Lion pass to Luotian Mountain and Lord Divine Master in detail, and ask Lord Divine Master to reward you according to your merits. Many thanks. Ji Tianqing cupped his fists to her, then turned and left the study. This time Lu Baishuang didn't stop him. She stood at the door of the study in a daze, watching Ji Tianqing's figure disappear at the end of the corridor. After a long time she sighed faintly, turned around and returned to the study with a lonely expression, and continued to bury herself in official business. When he came to the Heavenly Lion Pass, Ji Tianqing came alone, and he didn't make a sound. When he left the Heavenly Lion Pass, he was also alone, and didn't attract anyone's attention. After he left the Heavenly Lion Pass, he stepped on the clouds and flew towards the east. The east of the White Frost Empire was close to the Changlong Empire. The situation of the Changlong Empire was worse than that of the White Frost Empire. More than half of its territory had already been invaded by the Devil Race. Since the Devil Race army invaded the Luotian Kingdom, more than 200 million people of the Changlong Empire had already died in the flames of war. More than 1 billion people were forced to flee their homes and became homeless refugees. Fortunately, the surrounding empires had provided the Changlong Empire with corresponding help under the request of Luotian Mountain. If not for this, the Changlong Empire would have been unable to hold on until now, and would have collapsed long ago. Ji Tianqing's next target was the Changlong Empire. While he was flying, he calculated silently in his heart, now the Devil Race army has already killed their way to the center of the Changlong Empire. The battle line is hundreds of thousands of miles long, and there are more than 20 checkpoints in between. However, there are only 2 checkpoints that are the most important, and they are the gateways to the thousands of cities in the south. Once those 2 checkpoints are broken, the Devil Race army will be able to lead the army south and invade the entire Changlong Empire. According to the previous intelligence, there are more than 2 million soldiers stationed in the Celestial Approach Pass and the Long Mountain Canyon respectively, and they have been desperately resisting the Devil Race's attack. Since the Celestial Approach Pass is closer to me, I will go there first to take a look. After making up his mind, Ji Tianqing slightly adjusted his flying direction and rushed towards the Celestial Approach Pass. He flew continuously for 8 days and nights before he entered the Changlong Empire. He only reached the vicinity of the Celestial Approach Pass on the evening of the 12th day. When he was still a few hundred miles away, he could already see the Celestial Approach Pass that had existed since ancient times, and he could feel the majestic aura. Under the setting sun, the sky was filled with gray clouds, but it was dyed with a faint layer of blood. Chapter 2096. Ji Tianqing was the god of death who had killed his way through mountains of corpses and seas of blood. He was very sensitive to the smell of blood. Seeing the sky dyed red with blood and smelling the thick scent of blood, he realized that something was wrong. He sped up and flew towards the immortal Linxian Pass. Soon he saw the sky in front of him lit up with colorful rays of spiritual energy. There were also low rumbling noises that spread out wave after wave. Hurricanes started to blow between heaven and earth. Those were the shockwaves from the battle. The trees on the mountains were all blown away. I didn't think that I would come at the right time. The demon army is attacking the immortal Linxian Pass. Ji Tianqing raised an eyebrow. His eyes flashed with cold murderous intent. After 20 breaths, he was 100 miles away from the immortal Linxian Pass. He stopped in the sky. He looked down from the sky and immediately saw the situation at the immortal Linxian Pass. The famous immortal Linxian Pass was a giant mountain that was 10,000 meters tall. It was majestic and boundless. On the south side of the giant mountain was a rolling mountain range. The mountain was covered with dark green primitive forests. On the north side of the giant mountain was a vast plain. There were no mountains, forests, or lakes. This giant mountain existed 10,000 years ago and gave birth to many myths and legends. Standing at the peak of the immortal Linxian Pass, one could reach out and touch the stars in the sky. Every full moon night, the bright moonlight would shine on the mountain peak. It made one feel pure and holy. But now the immortal Linxian Pass had become a battlefield. It was a land of blood. On the mountain peak, there was an open space with a radius of 100 miles. There were many palaces and courtyards built there. There was also a giant military camp. On the mountain range behind the giant mountain, there were tens of thousands of buildings lined up in a row. They formed a military camp that was 300 miles long. There were more than 2 million human soldiers from different empires. They were stationed in this military camp. At this moment, on the north side of the giant mountain, there were hundreds of thousands of demon soldiers. They were like a Black Sea rushing towards the immortal Linxian Pass. There were about 600,000 demons. They were divided into 6 armies and arranged in different formations. They were attacking the immortal Linxian Pass fiercely. All kinds of powerful demonic path secret techniques, dazzling blood-red light, and soul fire poured down crazily on the battlefield. Countless mountain-like, ferocious-looking demonic beasts let out deafening roars and fiercely charged at the formation of human warriors. About 500,000 human soldiers formed a defensive formation outside the Celestial Arrival Pass, resisting with all their might. Every minute, every second, countless human warriors were killed, falling into puddles of blood without even having a complete body. Cries of agony rang out incessantly. Streaks of bright red blood splattered, causing a hazy blood mist to accumulate above the battlefield. Ji Tianqing's gaze left the battlefield and gradually moved upwards. Soon he saw thousands of demon clan and human clan generals fighting each other in the sky above the battlefield. There were more than 20 blood gods illusions hiding in the clouds, devouring blood qi and souls to strengthen themselves. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing no longer hesitated. His figure flashed and rushed to the battlefield. Shua! He teleported 30 miles away and appeared behind a blood god's illusion. This blood god's illusion was very cunning. Its body turned into a wisp of dark red blood mist, flying in the sky without attracting too much attention. It was absorbing the blood qi from all directions and merging it into its body. Suddenly, a dazzling holy white light came from behind it. That holy white light condensed into a giant sword that was 30 feet long, erupting with an invincible and destructive power. The blood god's illusion felt the power of the holy white light, and was instantly filled with fear and quickly teleported away. However, it was only at the 3rd level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. How could it escape from Ji Tianqing's attack? Shua! With a flash, the white light giant sword slashed the blood god's illusion's body. It was cut in half on the spot, turning into 2 dark red blood mists. Before it could counterattack or escape, the holy white light spread out and immediately enveloped the 2 halves of its body. Under the purification of the holy white light, the dark red blood mist quickly dissipated like snow melting. In just 3 breaths, this blood god's illusion was completely purified by the holy white light and disappeared completely. Until the moment it disappeared, it still didn't understand what was going on, let alone who killed it. Ji Tianqing killed a blood god's illusion in 1 move, and didn't stop to kill another blood god's illusion. He used the same trick again. While the blood god's illusion was unprepared, he waved his hand and released a dazzling white light. Shua! After a few breaths, this blood god's illusion was also purified by the white light and completely disappeared. Next, Ji Tianqing's figure kept flashing in the sky, killing one blood god's illusion after another. Most of the blood god's illusions were devouring the blood qi and souls on the battlefield. However, there were also a few blood god's illusions that quietly released plagues and poisons, causing all kinds of disasters. Their lethality was very shocking. The plagues and poisons released could poison thousands of soldiers in an instant. Fortunately, Ji Tianqing got rid of these blood god's illusions in time to prevent the disaster from spreading further. 15 minutes later, he killed 21 blood god's illusions. The 5 surviving blood god's illusions all discovered his existence and saw his terrifying means. The 5 blood god's illusions didn't dare to stay any longer. They hurriedly fled to the north, away from the battlefield. Ji Tianqing was just about to chase after them when he was stopped by 9 demon race powerhouses. These 9 demon race powerhouses were all in the 2nd or 3rd level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm, and led 20,000 to 30,000 demon race warriors. They were powerful, and their auras were ferocious. Without saying a word, they used their secret techniques to surround and attack Ji Tianqing. Shua shua! Suddenly, the sky was covered with the brilliance of spells. All kinds of ferocious and terrifying phantoms of demon race secret techniques covered the sky within a 5-kilometer radius. Such a huge commotion also alarmed the human generals in the sky. More than 20 human generals discovered Ji Tianqing's presence. Although he was wearing a white robe, he didn't wear armor like the generals. However, the 20 or so human generals all looked worried and rushed over to save him. Unfortunately, everyone was rather far away, and was simply unable to save Ji Tianqing in time. Ji Tianqing was about to be drowned by the brilliance of spells, and blasted into pieces on the spot. However, a scene that left everyone dumbfounded appeared. Even though he was in a dangerous situation, he calmly took out a black sword and waved it calmly, sending out dozens of sword lights. Stars shatter. 49 silver sword lights bloomed like lotuses, illuminating the sky within a 100-kilometer radius. No matter how powerful the demon race secret techniques were, how ferocious the bloodlights and demon soul phantoms were, they all collapsed and dissipated after meeting the starry sword lights. The dazzling starry sword lights actually defeated all the attacks. Not only that. Chapter 2097. The sword light was like lightning, and silver lotuses bloomed. 9 Tribulation Realm demon generals were killed in one move, dying without a complete corpse. As for Ji Tianqing, he was unscathed. His white robe and hair were still spotless. More than 20 human generals rushed over, but they were stunned by the scene in front of them. Their eyes widened in horror, revealing expressions of disbelief. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, they would not have believed it. That handsome and valiant white-robed youth was clearly so young, but he was able to kill 9 demon generals in one move. What kind of amazing strength was this? Was he a top martial lord? Or was he an extraordinary martial saint expert? No one knew the answer. The generals also did not recognize this unfamiliar white-robed youth. Just as everyone was stunned, the white-robed youth attacked again. His feet moved in a mysterious way, and his body flashed in the sky with a series of afterimages. Swish, swish, swish. In the blink of an eye, 7 silver-white sparks bloomed in the sky within a 50-kilometer radius. They were as gorgeous as 7 stars in a row. At the same time, the bodies of the 7 demon generals exploded, turning into a rain of dark purple flesh and blood, burning into ashes in the sparks. The 7 demon generals were scattered in different places, several kilometers away from each other. However, Ji Tianqing was too fast, and his swordsmanship was too amazing. He killed all of them in the blink of an eye. In the eyes of many human generals, the 7 demon generals were killed at the same time. Everyone was so shocked that their hearts stopped beating. They looked at Ji Tianqing in amazement, shocked. Oh my God! This general, no, who is this senior? We have never seen him before. He should not be a general of our army. Maybe he is a strong reinforcement that Marshal Xie invited. What a terrifying movement technique, what an amazing swordsmanship. Today is really an eye-opener. I am sure that this senior is definitely a martial saint expert. That decisive and unparalleled swordsmanship is not inferior to Marshal Xie's. For a moment, hundreds of human generals in the sky stared at Ji Tianqing's figure, exclaiming and discussing. However, Ji Tianqing turned a deaf ear to them. His figure continued to flicker in the sky, killing demon generals one after another. He executed the heavenly dragon's 7 steps, and held the sword of burial of heaven in his hand. He executed an extraordinarily profound sword technique, and there was actually no one who was a match for him. No one could stop it, and even gods and ghosts would flee. In the eyes of many human soldiers, there were only countless afterimages of Ji Tianqing and the silver sword light that filled the sky. Swish, swish. In the short span of 100 breaths, Ji Tianqing had actually killed over 150 devil generals in succession. The battlefield was immediately thrown into chaos. The remaining 1,000 devil race generals were all frightened into retreating, not daring to get close to Ji Tianqing. The morale of the human generals was greatly boosted, and they took the opportunity to attack the demon generals, forcing them to retreat again and again. When Ji Tianqing saw that the battle in the sky was stabilizing, he looked down at the battlefield below. Seeing the demon race army surging forward with murderous intent, and the human race army constantly retreating, he hurriedly stepped in to help. Heavenly Dragon Palm. With a wave of his left palm, an overwhelming golden light shot out, forming a 1,000 feet long golden dragon. Roar! The heavenly dragon let out a dragon roar that shook the clouds, and with the power to destroy heaven and earth, it swooped down toward the battlefield. Boom! The next moment, an earth-shattering explosion erupted, shaking a radius of hundreds of miles. A 30-mile gap was blasted open in the demon race army's formation on the spot. On the grassland that was sprinkled with corpses and blood, a huge pit was blasted open, and dust flew up into the sky. At least 20,000 devil race soldiers were killed on the spot by the heavenly dragon palm, turning into dust and scattering on the battlefield. Meteor fire shower. Ji Tianqing shouted with a grave expression, and his aura erupted to the extreme as he brazenly used his ultimate killing move. He formed a sword seal with his left hand and waved the sword of burial of heaven with his right hand, and a soaring golden flame ignited behind him. Immediately, nearly 100 silver light spots lit up in the dusky sky and blasted down like meteors. Following the meteor from outer space was an overwhelming surge of heavenly fire. Inside and outside the immortal Overlook Pass, it was instantly lit up by the stars and flames, and the heaven and earth were filled with radiance. The hundreds of thousands of humans and demons were so shocked that their expressions changed drastically, and they could not open their eyes because of the blinding light. Countless soldiers looked up at the sky instinctively. What they saw was a human youth in a white robe, with long hair and a mysterious black sword in his hand. He stood proudly in the sky, as majestic and sacred as a god, and so powerful that it made people respect him. The meteors and heavenly fire that fell from the sky were like the servants of a god, following his summons. Rumble! In the next moment, hundreds of meteors that were as large as mountains crashed into the demon race's camp. Next, the overwhelming heavenly fire covered a radius of nearly 100 miles, drowning more than 200,000 devil race soldiers. The grassland outside the immortal Overlook Pass was instantly turned into a sea of fire, and smoke and dust covered the sky. The deafening sound was as if the heaven and earth were falling apart, and the sun and moon were collapsing, causing everyone to feel dizzy. The ground within a radius of a few hundred miles was trembling violently as spiderweb-like cracks appeared all over the ground. Even the 10,000-meter-tall majestic immortal Overlook Pass was shaking violently from the impact. Such a destructive scene made the hundreds of thousands of soldiers tremble in fear. While everyone was running and avoiding the shockwaves, the only thing that appeared in their minds was the majestic figure in the white robe. Many of them had the same thought. Who was that young man in the white robe? Was he a human or a god? How could he control the meteors and create such a horrifying natural disaster? After a long while, the smoke and flames that covered the sky gradually dissipated. The battlefield became clear, and the hundreds of thousands of soldiers could finally see the situation clearly. They saw that on the vast grassland, there were hundreds of huge craters, and they were scattered on the ground within a radius of 200 miles. This huge crater had been burned black by the heavenly fire, and it had completely turned into a charred ruin. At the bottom of the crater, there were remnants of dark red lava, and wisps of flames were floating around. At least 200,000 soldiers of the demon race army had been burned to ashes and disappeared. The ground around the crater was covered with a thick layer of dust, and it was also charred black. The formation of the demon race army was broken, and they were split into several groups, scattered and defeated. More importantly, after such a destructive attack, countless soldiers of the demon race were traumatized, and their morale was at an all-time low. When the soldiers of the human race saw this, they were all shocked and they found it unbelievable. At the same time, the soldiers' morale was greatly boosted, and they charged even more bravely. Ji Tianqing appeared again. He flew above the demon race army, and once again waved his hand and used his ultimate technique, lightning attraction technique. He formed a spell with both hands, and gathered the power of lightning within a 10,000-mile radius. He condensed it into hundreds of lightning bolts and struck the demon race army. Kaboom! Boom boom boom! Deafening thunders exploded one after another, shaking the heavens. Chapter 2098. Every bolt of lightning had the power to destroy the heavens and the earth. Over 100 bolts of lightning struck down at the same time. Even an ordinary martial sage would be turned into charcoal. Most of the demon soldiers on the battlefield were only in the heavenly origin realm and the spirit tempering realm. Under the heavenly lightning, They were like ants that could only be turned into ashes. The thunderous roar lasted for dozens of breaths before it dissipated. The land that was already in ruins became even more chaotic after being struck by over 100 bolts of lightning. Within a radius of 300 miles, there were deep pits in scorched earth. Countless ashes and fragments of weapons and armors were scattered on the ground. Another 100,000 demon soldiers were killed on the spot by the heavenly lightning and disappeared without a trace. The 300,000 survivors of the demon clan were completely terrified. They lost their fighting spirit and will to fight. With Ji Tianqing, the god of death, who could destroy the heavens and the earth, no one dared to muster up any courage. They only wanted to escape from the immortal face pass as soon as possible. There was a commotion in the demon army. Countless people fled outside the immortal face pass in panic. Hundreds of thousands of human soldiers were shocked to see such a drastic change in the scorched earth outside the immortal face pass. Everyone's eyes were focused on Ji Tianqing. They were full of admiration and respect. All sorts of cheers, shouts, and discussions erupted like a mountain torrent, filling the sky. Our race is mighty. Our race will win. This is unbelievable. That senior can summon the heavenly lightning and kill 100,000 demon soldiers. This is the power of a god. Even our commander Xie can't control the heavenly lightning, right? Who is that senior? Our commander Xie is so powerful. He can invite such a powerful senior to help us. Victory will be ours. Such an unfathomable senior is so young and handsome. This is unbelievable. Senior alone can kill 1,000,000 lions and kill 1,000,000 demon soldiers. Senior's demeanor is unparalleled. He is like a god of war. If I can have 1/10,000th of him, it will be enough to make a name for myself in the army. Countless soldiers were full of admiration and respect for Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing did not say a word, continuing to pursue the fleeing demon army with his sword. The 9 swords of the burial of heaven, the heavenly dragon palm technique, and various other secret techniques were displayed one by him. Incomparably sharp sword lights, dazzling magical power splendor, and earth-shattering lightning and starry divine fire constantly poured into the demon army. He pursued them for hundreds of miles and killed tens of thousands of devil soldiers. The human generals also hurriedly gave orders. They led hundreds of thousands of soldiers out of the celestial overlook pass and chased after the demon soldiers. For hours later, the battle finally ended. The fleeing devil race army was also completely wiped out. Only a few thousand people managed to escape with their lives. In this battle, the human race had won a complete victory. It was an incomparably beautiful victory. When hundreds of thousands of human warriors returned in triumph, cheers and shouts were heard from both inside and outside the celestial overlook pass. Everyone was jubilant and proud of this perfect victory. However, all the soldiers knew that the greatest contributor to this victory was the mysterious white-robed youth. He alone had killed 300,000 devil soldiers. It could be said that his battle achievements were splendid and shocking to the extreme. After the battle ended, the soldiers were still unwilling to retreat and rest. They were still discussing this matter. The generals who led the army did not have time to reward the soldiers. They hurriedly flew into the sky and greeted the white-robed youth. They saw the white-robed youth standing in the sky with a proud expression. He seemed to be observing and thinking about something. The few generals went up to greet him respectfully and humbly bowed to him. "Senior, I Wei Yu, pay my respects to you. I Yi Xianqing represent the 100,000 soldiers under my command to thank you for your help. I, Ban Yunshan, represent the 100,000 soldiers in the vanguard camp to thank you for your help. I, General." The 5 generals had different facial features. There was a burly middle-aged man, a thin white-haired elder, and a handsome young man. However, they were all in the 3rd or 4th level of the tribulation realm and led 100,000 soldiers. In the celestial approach pass, they only obeyed the orders and orders of Xia Wusheng. They only respected Xia Wusheng. However, after the battle just now, the 5 generals worshipped Ji Tianqing and were in awe of him. Ji Tianqing looked at the 5 generals calmly and said, "Generals, you don't have to be so courteous. It is my responsibility and mission to kill the devil and protect the territory of the holy nation." The 5 generals were still discussing Ji Tianqing's identity and background. They even argued about it. Some people thought that Ji Tianqing was a strong helper invited by Xia Wusheng. He was most likely a friend of Xie Wusheng. Some people thought that he was an expert in the martial arts world. He was most likely an expert who lived in seclusion. He was just passing by and decided to help. Some people thought that he must be a martial sage expert sent by the holy nation. He was most likely a trusted subordinate of the divine master. Hearing his words, the 5 generals were certain of his identity. He must be an expert sent by the divine master. His goal was to support the celestial approach pass and kill the devil. Wei Yu cupped his hands at Ji Tianqing and asked respectfully, "Senior, you have shown your prowess today and killed more than 300,000 devils. You have made a great contribution. I think our General Xie Wusheng would like to thank you in person. It's just that we still don't know Senior's name, so we'd like to ask." Ji Tianqing saw their curious faces and was ready to tell them the truth. However, he remembered what happened at the Heavenly Lion Pass and decided to keep it a secret. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, he said expressionlessly, "You don't have to ask. Just bring me to see your general." The 5 generals understood and guessed that he had a secret mission and could not reveal it easily. Therefore, the 5 of them cupped their hands at the same time and said, "If that is the case, we have been rude. Please follow us." Then the 5 generals surrounded Ji Tianqing and flew into the Celestial Approach Pass. In the Celestial Approach Pass, hundreds of thousands of soldiers were still discussing the previous battle. They were talking excitedly. Seeing Ji Tianqing and the 5 generals flying across the sky, countless people had looks of reverence on their faces as they bowed to greet them. Soon, the 5 generals brought Ji Tianqing to the peak of the Celestial Approach Pass and landed in front of the most glorious and solemn general's palace. The door of the conference hall was wide open. On both sides of the stairs outside the door, there were 2 rows of silver-armored guards. Ji Tianqing was the first to cross the stairs and enter the meeting hall. In the spacious and bright conference hall, there were several golden-armored generals reporting to the white-haired elder at the head of the table. The white-haired elder was thin and tall. He wore a black and white Taoist robe and a white jade crown on his head. He looked extremely sage-like. Without a doubt, he was the general of the Celestial Approach Pass, Xie Wusheng. When he raised his head to look at the entrance of the conference hall and saw Ji Tianqing's face clearly, his body suddenly shook as if he was petrified. His eyes widened and he was stunned for a long time before he came back to his senses. He stood up excitedly and appeared in front of Ji Tianqing in a flash. He stared at Ji Tianqing in disbelief and tears welled up in his eyes. Master, is it really you?" Xie Wusheng's lips trembled as he asked in a low and stuttering voice. The generals and guards were dumbfounded when they saw Xie Wusheng's excited reaction and heard what he said. Everyone in the hall revealed shocked and astonished expressions as they looked at Ji Tianqing with a face full of doubt. Chapter 2099. The spacious and bright meeting hall fell into silence. Even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. Not only were the 10 generals and a dozen guards stunned, even Ji Tianqing was a little stunned. He frowned and looked at Marshal Saint Xie, who was 5 steps away from him. He stared at his face, entranced. It was a face that was slightly old but not withered. Perhaps it was due to his cultivation, or perhaps it was because he was a martial saint, but his face was still rosy and his complexion was excellent. On his slightly thin face, there was a pair of narrow but deep eyes, which contained the vicissitudes of life and extraordinary wisdom. Under the high bridge of his nose was a pair of thin lips. He had a wisp of white beard that hung down to his chest. When Ji Tianqing first saw this old face, he felt that it was somewhat familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere before. When he carefully looked at it twice, a similar face immediately appeared in his mind. Of course, that face of about 20 years old was Marshal Saint Xie's appearance when he was young. Following that, a memory from 1,000 years ago appeared in Ji Tianqing's mind. That year, Ji Tianqing sat at Tianju Mountain and challenged all the martial saints in the world. He won every battle and became famous. Countless ambitious youths rushed to Tianju Mountain to learn martial arts. The disciples of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains were all hard-working and ambitious young geniuses. Only a skinny and dark-skinned kid was an anomaly among the disciples. This person was like a skinny monkey, and his eyes were abnormally bright. He always had a sloppy appearance, not caring about his appearance. He often had a messy hairstyle and carried a set of jade chess to play chess with his fellow disciples. However, his chess skills were incomparably exquisite, and none of the disciples of Tianju Mountain were his match. He did not focus on practicing martial arts and swordsmanship, but did not do his job all day. Naturally, Kenshin was displeased, and Huanglong Daoist reminded and taught him many times. Unfortunately, he was still stubborn, and in the end, he angered Huanglong Daoist, who wanted to expel him from the sect. It was late at night in the pouring rain, and he knelt outside Kenshin's study for an entire night. In the end, Kenshin sympathized with his stubbornness and summoned him to an audience to listen to his story. It turned out that his obsession with chess was related to the massacre of his family. He carried a blood feud and came to Tianju Mountain to learn martial arts, wanting to become an expert and avenge his family. Thus, the god of swords studied his ancient chess book and personally taught him. From then on, he walked on the right path, and his strength increased by leaps and bounds. 300 years later, he successfully broke through the martial sage realm and became the renowned chess saint. He was the disciple of Tianju Mountain, and the current chess saint Xia Wudao. The memories gradually disappeared, and the young face in Ji Tianqing's mind gradually overlapped with the martial saint Xia in front of him. He finally understood Xia. I did not expect Xia Wudao. Back then this kid was as dark and skinny as a monkey. He was the ugliest among his fellow disciples. 1,000 years later, he has become so benevolent and sage-like. Ji Tianqing muttered to himself and was about to shout, Xia Wudao. However, just as he spoke, he stopped abruptly. Ji Tianqing glanced at the generals and guards around him, and quickly changed his words. He said coldly, Martial Sage Xia, you have the wrong person. Martial Sage Xia stared at him, still immersed in his excitement and joy, and did not react. No, Master, even though I have not seen your face for 1,000 years, I will always remember it in my heart, and imprint it in my spiritual soul. I will never forget it. Even though you have been through 1,000 years, your appearance, gaze, figure and aura have not changed. Master, your disciple Xia Wudao kowtows. Xia Wudao said sincerely, and was about to kneel down and bow. He was very sure that the white-robed youth in front of him was his master, Kenshin. Regardless of appearance, gaze or soul aura, there was no difference. However, Ji Tianqing stretched out his hands and held his arms like iron hoops, preventing him from kneeling. Martial Sage Xia, please calm down. I am Ji Tianqing, and I am here on the orders of the Divine Master. I have something important to discuss with you. Ji Tianqing looked at him coldly, and his tone was very serious. It was as if he really did not know him. Xia Wudao looked at him in astonishment. Then, he slowly straightened his body and suppressed the excitement in his heart. After 10 breaths, Xia Wudao finally calmed down, and returned to his calm and indifferent attitude. He glanced at the generals and guards around him, and said in a dignified tone, all of you can leave now. Ben Shuai has something important to discuss with Master Ji. No one is allowed to disturb us. Only then did the 10 generals and the many guards come back to their senses. They looked at Ji Tianqing and Xia Wudao with strange expressions, and quickly bowed and left. However, they had all witnessed the situation. After leaving the meeting hall, they began to discuss secretly. Oh my God! What happened to Martial Xia? Why did he suddenly lose his composure? Martial Xia has always been calm and wise. Why did he react so violently? Did you hear that? Martial Xia called that person master, and even wanted to bow to him. Martial Xia's master? I heard that Martial Xia came from Tianju Mountain, and is Kenshin's direct disciple. Doesn't that mean that young master surnamed Ji is the legendary sword god? That's ridiculous. Kenshin fell 1,000 years ago. How could he appear again? But Martial Xia is such a wise man. How could he mistake his master for someone else? And Martial Xia also said that Master Ji's appearance, eyes, and soul aura are exactly the same. That's too unbelievable. Could it be that reincarnated people really exist in this world? Is Master Ji really Kenshin's reincarnation? Maybe Kenshin didn't fall at all. After all, no one saw him die with their own eyes. It's just a rumor. If it's really Kenshin's reincarnation, then it's a story that will shock the world. No wonder Master Ji is as powerful as a deity. He killed more than 300,000 demons alone. Other than Kenshin, who else could have such a demeanor? The 10 generals and dozens of guards gathered in twos and threes to discuss this matter. Everyone guessed that Ji Tianqing was Kenshin, or Kenshin's reincarnation. They were both shocked and excited. They hurried back to the barracks and told the others about this matter. After all, this was a story that had never happened before. Only Ji Tianqing and Xia Wudao were left in the meeting hall. They immediately fell silent. Xia Wudao calmed down. He also felt that this matter was strange. His attitude towards Ji Tianqing was also much calmer. Master Ji, Banshui was rude just now. I've embarrassed myself in front of you. Banshui has heard of Master Ji's reputation and deeds a long time ago. You are the #1 God's disciple of Luoshui Kingdom, the #1 genius of the human race. Also, Banshui has heard about how you helped the Heavenly Lion pass and defeated the demons. Chapter 2100. Ji Tianqing sat upright on a pearwood chair, listening with a calm expression. After Xia Wudao finished speaking, he asked in a low voice, Xia Wudao, do you really see Kenshin as your master and respect him your whole life? Xia Wudao was stunned for a moment. His face was full of doubt as he looked at him. Young Master Ji, what do you mean? A master for a day is a father for life. My master treated me like a nephew. Not only did he take me in, but he also taught me martial arts and chess. If not for my master's guidance, I would not have been able to take revenge and achieve what I have today. I carry the mark of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains and am a disciple of Kenshin. This will not change in my life. Xia Wudao frowned. His tone was a little angry, but at the same time it was resolute and unquestionable. Ji Tianqing was not angry. His expression did not change. He looked at Xia Wudao calmly and asked, since you see your master as your father, why did you leave the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains and set up your own sect? Xia Wudao was stunned. He pursed his lips with a complicated expression. He was hesitating about how to explain when he suddenly realized something. He looked at Ji Tianqing with dignity and asked, Young Master Ji, as far as Banshui knows, you are the eldest disciple of Luoshan Mountain and the most valued disciple of the God Master. You have also contributed a lot to the God Nation. Banshui respects you and is grateful that you came to the Immortal Pass to help. However, the matter of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains and Banshui's master seems to have nothing to do with you. Why do you ask? Ji Tianqing smiled and asked, how can it have nothing to do with me? Didn't you hear the news that I am a disciple of Kenshin? 2 years ago, I returned to the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains and managed the affairs of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains with the Huanglong Taoist. What? Xia Wudao's face was filled with shock. He stood up and looked at Ji Tianqing in disbelief. You are Master's disciple? No, this is impossible. Even if you are Master's successor, you shouldn't have the same appearance and temperament as Master. Furthermore, your eyes and soul aura are exactly the same as Master's. Ji Tianqing glanced at him and calmly explained, that's right. It's because I inherited Kenshin's martial arts legacy. Didn't the Huanglong Taoist mention this to you? Xia Wudao fell silent again. After a moment of hesitation, he said bitterly, Senior Huanglong and I have not contacted each other for many years. Ji Tianqing looked at him with burning eyes. Why don't you contact her? Xia Wudao shook his head and revealed a bitter smile. Junior brother Ji, don't ask me about this. I have my own difficulties. However, I dare to swear to the heavens that I absolutely did not betray Master, nor did I do anything to let down the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. Whether it is Master or Senior brother Huanglong, I will always be loyal to them. If there is any danger to the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains, as long as Senior brother Huanglong says the word, I will go through water and tread on fire without hesitation. Ji Tianqing calmly looked at him for a long time before nodding slightly. All right, I will not ask any more questions. I am willing to believe your words. However, you should still call me Young Master Ji. And Xia Wudao was startled and asked in confusion, we are all Master's disciples, and you are the youngest successor. You should be our junior brother. Why? There is no reason, just call me Young Master Ji. Ji Tianqing said firmly. Xia Wudao looked at him with a complicated expression. He felt bitter in his heart and thought, could it be that junior brother Ji knows about what happened back then and blames me? No, senior brother Huang Long is definitely not that kind of person. He would not take the initiative to say that. Ji Tianqing saw his strange expression and warned, from today onwards, don't mention my true identity to anyone, and don't involve the Pillar of Heaven's mountains in Qinshin. Just say that I am the eldest disciple of the Luotian Mountain, and that I am here to support the army under the orders of the Divine Master to fight against the devil race. Xia Wudao did not hesitate and quickly nodded. All right, I will definitely keep this matter a secret for you. Ji Tianqing was still a little worried and said, just now, you lost your composure in front of everyone. Those generals and guards will definitely misunderstand and have some complicated conjectures. So, you have to think of a way to make them keep it a secret and not spread the news. Xia Wudao immediately agreed and said solemnly, Master Ji, young Master Ji, please don't worry. This old man will definitely do as you say. Ji Tianqing then changed the topic and said seriously, all right, we have finished talking about private matters. Let's talk about business. You are now the commander-in-chief of the Celestial Face Pass, and you are in charge of 3 million soldiers. I am here to help you fight, and I only want to defeat the Devil Race Army as soon as possible. What do you plan to do with me? When it came to military achievements and merits, Xia Wudao became spirited and said with a burning gaze, young Master Ji, just now you displayed your invincible might outside the pass. You single-handedly defeated the Devil Race Army and killed more than 300,000 Devil Race soldiers. This old man has already heard the report from the generals. Such a world-shaking battle record was simply world-shaking. This old man still felt that it was inconceivable, but now I know that you are actually Master's successor. No wonder you have such a peerless demeanor. Also, the Heavenly Lion Pass's army was able to defeat the Devil Race Army within a month because of your help. Your valiant military achievements and legendary deeds have already spread throughout the northern battlefield. Not only are the people of the White Frost Empire grateful and worshipping you, even the people of the Changlong Empire and the Scarlet Sun Empire are full of admiration for you. They only hope that you can save them as soon as possible. Ji Tianqing quietly listened. After Xia Wudao finished speaking, he asked, So. Xia Wudao's face was full of smiles. He said in a playful tone, this old man has decided to invite you to be the deputy commander of the army and assist this old man in battle. You and this old man are from the same sect, and your military achievements have spread throughout the world. You should be appointed as the deputy commander, and it won't be a waste of your talent. In the future, the strategy and plan to deal with the Devil Race Army will be based on your opinion. This old man will fully support you. Ji Tianqing nodded and said, that's good too. Then arrange a place for me to stay, and announce the news of my appointment. In addition, arrange the map of the battlefield inside and outside the Celestial Overlook Pass, as well as the information about the Devil Race's military strength and defense, and give it to me. Xia Wudao repeatedly nodded and said, rest assured, young Master Ji. This old man will immediately send someone to do it. Ji Tianqing didn't say anything else. He stood up and walked to the door of the conference hall. Then Xia Wudao's personal guard came in and led Ji Tianqing into the commander's palace to arrange a place for him to stay. This middle-aged guard also had the strength of the second stage of Tribulation Realm. He was actually Xia Wudao's disciple. The place was spacious and bright, and the decorations were elegant and clean. There was also a secret room and a reception hall, which was exactly what Ji Tianqing wanted. After resting in the place, Ji Tianqing entered the secret room alone and prepared to cultivate. At this moment, the voice of the burial of heaven sounded in his mind. Among your many disciples, only a few were the most outstanding and the most loyal. Chapter 2101. Ji Tianqing had already guessed that burial of heaven would ask such a question. He raised his eyebrows and asked with a smile, do you think that I don't trust Xia Wudao and am testing him on purpose? It's obvious that you have already tested him. Burial of Heaven replied calmly. Ji Tianqing looked ahead with a complicated expression. When I was at Tianju Mountain, I mentioned Xiaobai and Xia Wudao to Huang Long. Huang Long avoided talking about Xia Wudao, and only talked about Little White for a while. From then on, I guessed that there might be some misunderstanding between Huang Long and Xia Wudao. Burial of Heaven said faintly, "So you questioned Xia Wudao in person just now?" Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "Yes, I'd like to know what happened between them." Unfortunately, Xia Wudao did not say anything, so I did not ask. However, Xia Wudao might have his own difficulties. As long as he did not change his mind about me and Tianju Mountain, it's fine. Burial of Heaven continued, "Since you've already confirmed that Xia Wudao did not betray us, why didn't he tell you the truth? Your attitude towards him and towards Huang Long are clearly two different things." Ji Tianqing nodded. "Of course there is a difference. When news of my death spreads, Xinwu continent will definitely be in a perilous situation. I have offended so many powers and powerhouses in the past, and they will definitely take revenge on Tianju Mountain. For thousands of years, Tianju Mountain has always been in danger and predicament. No matter how loyal a disciple is, it is impossible for them to protect their former glory and faith and accompany Tianju Mountain to its destruction. Many disciples have gone their separate ways and established their own factions. This is human nature, and I do not blame them. Now that I see Xia Wudao again, I will not blame him either. However, Huang Long has always been at Tianju Mountain and has protected it for thousands of years. He is my most loyal disciple, and I naturally trust him the most." After pausing for a moment, Ji Tianqing continued, "Currently, only Yao Yao, Cuckoo, and Huang Long know my true identity, and they will keep their mouths shut. At present, my strength is still not strong enough, so it's not good for me to reveal my identity. Otherwise, there will be endless troubles." Burial of Heaven agreed and nodded. "That's right. There are countless people who want to kill you. Aside from the demon race, there are also many martial Dao forces and martial saint experts." Ji Tianqing said calmly, "Xia Wudao lost his composure in front of everyone in the hall just now, which has already aroused everyone's suspicion and speculation. I could only hide my identity and let Xia Wudao block the news. If I reveal my identity to him, no matter how he disguises himself, he will be exposed in front of everyone. Once the news of Kenshin's rebirth spreads throughout the continent, I'm afraid we'll have no choice but to continue living in exile. I'm not sure how many people want to kill me, and how many will help me." Burial of Heaven was silent for a moment, then said in a serious tone, "That's good. Before you recover your divine realm, it's best to keep it a secret. Now that Xia Wudao treats you as his junior brother, he will take good care of you. You'll have one more helper." Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "It doesn't matter whether I help or not. Now, I'm going to help him guard the Celestial Overlook Pass and expel the demon race army." Burial of Heaven thought for a moment and asked, "You've just arrived at the Celestial Overlook Pass and you're not preparing to fight. Instead, you're cultivating in the secret room. Could it be that your strength has reached a critical point and you're about to break through to the martial saint realm?" Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "That's right. I have a feeling that I'll be able to break through within a month. Only when I return to the martial saint realm can I display the true sword Wei lost skill and be qualified to roam the continent." Burial of Heaven reminded him, "That's right. Only when you return to the martial saint realm can you be truly reborn. At that time you'll be able to do more things, such as the illusory spirit star nucleus under the broken soul cliff. Also, the wreckage of the divine battleship under the ghost desert in the North Underworld Mountain." Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "You're only thinking about the illusory spirit star nucleus and the wreckage of the divine battleship. You want me to get them as soon as possible and help you restore to a divine artifact. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten. When I reach the martial saint realm, I'll definitely make a trip there." Burial of Heaven did not say anything more and said, "Then, go into seclusion and cultivate. We'll talk about this later." After that, Burial of Heaven fell into a deep sleep. Ji Tianqing also began to cultivate. Xia Wudao was very efficient. That night, he personally delivered the information that Ji Tianqing wanted. Ji Tianqing spent half the night reading all the information. He also had a sufficient understanding of the situation inside and outside the Celestial Overlook Pass and the military strength of the demon race army. Then he could rest assured and cultivate. Unknowingly, 5 days had passed. In these 5 days, Ji Tianqing had been cultivating in seclusion in the secret room to break through the bottleneck of the martial saint realm. Xia Wudao did not disturb him, Nor did he take the initiative to attack the demon race. He still trained the army as usual and spied on the demon race's intelligence. In addition, he also gathered a few generals and more than 10 guards who were present that day. He instructed everyone to keep it a secret and not to leak any information. Chapter 2102. Xia Wudao's reaction was completely within Ji Tianqing's expectations. He listened to Xia Wudao calmly and said, Lu Baishuang had the same reaction as you when I led my troops to the Sky Lion Pass for the first time. Xia Wudao was stunned for a moment. He looked ashamed and said awkwardly, Young Master Ji, I was rude. You have led troops into battle 8 times in the Heavenly Lion Pass, and you have achieved complete victory in all of them, without a single defeat. This news has spread throughout the northern battlefield. Your achievements and legends are all over the kingdom of gods. Of course I believe in you. But I can't explain it to the soldiers. Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly, You are the commander-in-chief of the Linxian Pass. Your words are orders. Military orders are like mountains. Why do you need to explain? This? Xia Wudao was in a dilemma. He hesitated for a moment and explained, But I am not a marshal or general of the kingdom of gods. I am only a leader of the martial arts community. That is why I was appointed as the commander-in-chief of the Linxian Pass. My status and my words are not enough. Disappointment flashed across Ji Tianqing's eyes. His expression was indifferent as he said, Since that's the case, gather all the generals and head to the conference hall for a discussion. I will personally speak to them. Xia Wudao was embarrassed. He quickly bowed and apologized. Young Master Ji, I am really sorry, but your prestige is quite high. I believe the generals will listen to your orders. After that, Xia Wudao ordered the guards to gather the 26 generals for a meeting. He personally brought Ji Tianqing to the conference hall. Half an hour later in the conference hall, Xia Wudao sat on the main seat with a serious and dignified face. Ji Tianqing stood in the conference hall with his back facing the door. He closed his eyes and rested. The 26 generals stepped into the conference hall one after another and stood in 2 rows. Everyone guessed that the commander-in-chief Xia Wudao must have some plan and was about to send out the troops. Everyone was full of anticipation and rubbed their palms together. However, when they saw Ji Tianqing, their expressions were a little strange. They secretly talked to each other through telepathy. Hey, is this the trusted Vice Commander Ji? How can he be so young? I didn't believe you when you said that Deputy Commander Ji was very young. Now that I've seen it with my own eyes, it's truly incredible. Have you heard about the previous incident? If that information is true, then this Lord Ji's status is the pinnacle of the continent, far surpassing the 3 divine masters. Shut up. This is a big secret. Marshal Xia strictly ordered that no one is allowed to talk about it. Commander Xia summoned us for a meeting. Deputy Commander Ji is also present. It seems that Deputy Commander Ji is going to lead the troops. Ha ha ha, if Deputy Commander Ji personally leads the army, I'll be the first to ask for permission to go to war. Of course, Vice Marshal Ji can stop 1,000,000 troops by himself. If we follow him into battle, we will definitely be invincible. Not long after, all 26 generals arrived. Xia Wudao said solemnly, Since all the generals are here, Ban Shuai would like to make an announcement. Previously, Ban Shuai had announced that Lord Ji Tianqing, who was sent by Luoshan Mountain, would be the deputy commander of Linxian Pass to assist Ban Shuai in resisting the devil race. Ban Shuai and Deputy Commander Ji spent a few days to seriously study the situation and the deployment of troops. Finally, they came up with a plan. Today, Deputy Commander Ji will personally lead the troops into battle. Hearing his words, the eyes of all 26 generals lit up. They were filled with excitement and anticipation. Everyone's eyes were gathered on Ji Tianqing. Everyone cupped their hands and bowed to him. They volunteered and shouted, Marshal Ji. This general has witnessed Marshal Ji's peerless demeanor with my own eyes. I'm already convinced by you and am willing to follow you into battle. This general greets Marshal Ji. I'm willing to be the vanguard general for Marshal Ji and sweep away all obstacles. Marshal Ji. This general admires you the most. Please, you must lead this general into battle. Everyone spoke enthusiastically, requesting to follow Ji Tianqing into battle and make a name for themselves. However, Ji Tianqing's expression was calm. He looked around indifferently and said, "You don't even know where you are going to battle, yet you're volunteering so bravely. I'm afraid that once you know Benshuai's target, you'll be afraid of the slightest thing and keep your mouth shut, right?" All the generals were stunned, their faces filled with confusion. Some of the more straightforward generals hurriedly asked, "Marshal Ji, where do you plan to attack with 300,000 soldiers?" "Marshal Ji, as long as you personally lead the troops, no matter where you attack, even if you have to climb a mountain of blades or plunge into a sea of flames, this general will follow." Ji Tianqing smiled in a non-committal manner. His tone was low and dignified as he enunciated each word clearly. "I will attack Black Wind Valley today." Upon hearing this news, the 20-some generals all paled and cried out in alarm. "Ah, what? Black Wind Valley? Heavens! That's the front line of the demon race, the most impregnable line of defense. Did we hear wrongly? Marshal Ji really wants to attack Black Wind Valley?" Black Wind Valley is impregnable and has more than 400,000 demon race guards, but Marshal Ji is only taking 300,000 soldiers to attack. Sai, isn't Marshal Ji's decision a little rash? The generals whispered to each other, unable to accept this order for a moment. Ji Tianqing could not help but reveal a disdainful sneer when he saw that no one dared to step forward to accept the order despite the endless discussion. Ha ha ha. Benshuai was right. Those who volunteered just now can't wait to shrink their heads back into their stomachs now. The generals were all very embarrassed. All of them revealed looks of shame and indignation, but they could not refute. Xia Wudao was also worried when he saw this scene. He sighed inwardly. He had long expected this outcome, but there was nothing he could do about it. Ji Tianqing no longer humiliated the generals. He said solemnly, "Benshuai only needs 3 generals to follow him, and 300,000 elite soldiers will be deployed. Those who follow Benshuai on the expedition will receive double the rewards after returning victorious. Of course, if you are afraid of death and are unwilling to go on the expedition, that's fine too. If this marshal were to attack Black Wind Valley alone, I would still be able to annihilate the Devil Army. However, when Benshuai conquers Black Wind Valley, he will leave the Celestial Overlook Pass to assist other battlefields. Benshuai disdains to be associated with people who are afraid of death." After saying that, Ji Tianqing swung his sleeves and strode towards the entrance of the main hall. Xia Wudao and more than 20 generals were shocked by his confidence and domineering aura. They were all dumbfounded and stood rooted to the ground. After a while, the crowd regained their senses and exclaimed in surprise, "Are you sure? Marshal Ji wants to attack Black Wind Valley alone? This is crazy." Marshal Ji's confidence and domineering aura are unparalleled and shocking. Marshal Ji is right. He dares to attack Black Wind Valley alone, but we are timid and afraid of death. What a disgrace. I don't care. Even if I die on the battlefield, I will follow Marshal Ji and go crazy for once. Yes, Marshal Ji is not afraid of death. What are we afraid of? Chapter 2103. Ji Tianqing had just walked out of the meeting hall when a shout came from behind him. "General Ji, please wait." He looked back and saw that 4 generals had followed him out. He stopped and looked at the 4 generals without saying a word. The 4 of them came before him and bowed respectfully. They said sincerely, "General Ji, we are willing to follow you into battle. We will not regret it until we die. General Ji, we are willing to go to the battlefield with you. We will live and die together. General Ji, please grant us our wish. General Ji, please grant us our wish. We are willing to die for you." Ji Tianqing glanced at the 4 generals. They were all the generals who had stopped the demon army outside the Celestial Advent Pass. At the same time, the 4 of them had witnessed the process of him killing more than 300,000 demon army. He raised his eyebrows and said calmly, "Wei Yu Yi Xianqing Ban Yunshan Tua Hai, and more than 20 other generals are hesitating. Why did you come along? You know that Benshuai is going to attack the Black Wind Valley. Are you not afraid of death?" Wei Yu, who was the leader, smiled calmly and said firmly, "General Ji, The four of us are ordinary people. Of course, we cherish our lives and are afraid of death. But we know that as generals of the empire, we have the responsibility and obligation to protect the empire's territory and defend the people against the demon army. So what if we are afraid of death? In the end, we can't lose our responsibility and integrity. Dying on the battlefield is the final destination for us. Moreover, with the wise General Ji leading us, we are willing to entrust our lives to General Ji. Ji Tianqing looked at Yi Xianqing, Ban Yunshan, and Tua Hai and asked, "Do you think so too?" "It's not too late to regret now. Ben Shuai will not blame you." The three generals shook their heads quickly and said firmly, "General Ji, you don't have to test us anymore. We will follow General Ji to death." Seeing that their attitude was firm and unwavering, Ji Tianqing smiled with satisfaction. "Very good. 10 days later, you will feel lucky and proud of your decision today." Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others were all stunned. They did not understand what he meant. However, Ji Tianqing did not explain. He waved his hand and ordered, "What are you waiting for? Go and gather your men. Ben Shuai is about to set out." The four generals hurriedly cupped their hands in salute and said, "Yes, sir," in unison. Then they turned around and strode away. Inside the meeting hall, over 20 generals looked at the backs of Wei Yu and the others as they left. They all revealed complicated expressions as they discussed secretly. Some people were filled with worry and anxiety, while others secretly felt regret and blamed themselves for their own hesitation and misgivings. There were also a few generals who had a vague premonition that they seemed to have missed the opportunity to soar and make a name for themselves in the world. Because of this, they felt extremely regretful. In a short 10 hours, Ji Tianqing led 400,000 elite soldiers and arrived at the Black Wind Valley outside the pass. The Black Wind Valley was located on a vast plain, more than 2,000 miles away from the immortal Lin Pass. This was a valley that was more than 10,000 miles long. On both sides were undulating mountain ranges and mounds. The surface was covered with brown soil and sand. Black fog lingered in the valley. It was filled with poisonous miasma and demonic fog. All kinds of strange howls could be heard constantly. It was as frightening as the abyss of hell. Every time the north attacked, a pitch-black gust of wind would blow out from the valley. It carried a strange and vicious poison and permeated the entire wilderness. Every time this happened, the immortal Lin Pass more than 2,000 miles away would activate its defensive array. Thousands of array masters would join forces to activate various arrays to defend against the poisonous gas in the Black Wind. The 400,000 soldiers arrived near the Black Wind Valley and stopped. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the other three were clustered around Ji Tianqing. They looked at the Black Wind Valley in front of them and revealed a fearful expression. "General Ji, you just said that you would gather the troops to attack. However, you haven't told us what your plan is?" "That's right, General Ji. The Black Wind Valley is easy to defend and difficult to attack. If we attack rashly, we will definitely suffer heavy casualties. Do you have a good plan?" "Everyone, don't worry. General Ji is so confident. He must have a good plan long ago." Ji Tianqing glanced at the four of them and said calmly, "What good plan? To deal with the remaining demons, we only need to fight them head-on. There is no need for schemes." Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others were stunned. Their expressions became extremely strange. "Ah, are you kidding? General Ji, you must be joking." "General Ji, you must not underestimate the enemy. The Black Wind Valley is heavily guarded. There are also many powerful blood gods. Even if a martial sage enters, he will most likely die." Ji Tianqing did not say much. He took out 8 talismans from his space ring and gave them to Wei Yu and the other 3. Each of them received 2 talismans. One was 5-colored and the other was as white as snow. They both contained shocking energy waves. The 4 generals were puzzled. They looked at Ji Tianqing and asked, "General Ji, what talismans are these?" Ji Tianqing said calmly, "These are talismans that Ben Shuai refined himself. The 5-colored one is the Heavenly Thunder Talisman, and the white one is the Holy Light Talisman. Keep them well. Later, Ben Shuai will sneak into the Black Wind Valley alone and assassinate the generals and blood gods in the valley. When the Black Wind Valley is in chaos and the defensive formations and fortifications are destroyed, Ben Shuai will send you a signal. At that time you will use these 2 talismans to blast open the defensive formations and lead the soldiers into the Black Wind Valley. You will be able to obtain a complete victory, Ji Tianqing said seriously, and his tone was very certain. When the 4 generals heard this, their expressions changed drastically. They hurriedly tried to dissuade him. General Ji, although you're powerful, you shouldn't put yourself in danger. It is too dangerous for you to sneak into the Black Wind Valley alone. This general is willing to accompany you. Ji Tianqing waved his hand disapprovingly and said calmly, other than the Devil Saint experts, no one can hurt Ben Shuai. Half a month ago, the last Devil Saint of the Devil race was also crippled by Ben Shuai. Now, no one can stop Ben Shuai's footsteps. The 4 generals were shocked. The more they thought about his words, the more they felt that it was inconceivable. Ban Yunshan hesitated for a moment and asked worriedly, General Ji, can these 2 Heavenly Thunder Talismans and Holy Light Talismans really blast open the defensive formations of the Black Wind Valley? Haha. Ji Tianqing only chuckled and did not answer. When his voice fell, his figure disappeared and flew towards the Black Wind Valley. The 4 generals looked at each other and hurriedly put away the 2 talismans. They led their soldiers and dispersed to carry out their mission. Half an hour later, the 4 generals each led 100,000 elite soldiers and laid in ambush around the Black Wind Valley. At this moment, the Black Wind Valley that was shrouded in black fog suddenly lit up with flames that soared into the sky. Dazzling silver starlight and heavenly thunder and lightning covered the sky. There was also a series of loud rumbling noises that reverberated in the wasteland. Chapter 2104. The originally peaceful Black Wind Valley was now in chaos. Dazzling magical power light constantly lit up in the valley, and deafening loud noises were heard. All kinds of heavenly fire, astral wind, heavenly thunder and star divine fire poured down in the valley, creating destructive power that could destroy the world. Countless demon experts and blood gods flew to the sky above the valley, searching for traces of strong enemies. All kinds of screams, angry roars and curses gathered into a sound wave torrent that reverberated in the sky. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing and the rest were lying in ambush outside the Black Wind Valley, hundreds of miles away. No one could see the situation in the valley clearly, and they did not know what was going on. But looking at the earth-shattering momentum, everyone could guess that the battle in the Black Wind Valley must be very intense. Marshal Ji is indeed a god. He barged into the Black Wind Valley alone and created such a terrifying commotion. He barged into the demon nest alone and assassinated the generals and experts of the demon race amidst more than 400,000 demon race troops. Such strength and courage is rare in the world. Although Marshal Ji is in a dangerous situation, we cannot act rashly before he sends out the signal. As long as there is still movement in the Black Wind Valley, it means that Marshal Ji is still safe. If the movement stops, we must rush in to rescue Marshal Ji no matter what. I have a feeling that Marshal Ji can destroy half of the Black Wind Valley alone. When he sends out the signal, we will lead our troops in to clean up the mess. The 4 generals were calculating, and their hearts were filled with worry and anxiety. They only hoped that Ji Tianqing would quickly send out the signal. However, the fighting in the Black Wind Valley continued for an entire hour and did not stop. The 4 generals were burning with anxiety and wanted to rush into the Black Wind Valley several times. But they forced themselves to remain calm and continued to wait. Finally, a bright golden light lit up in the Black Wind Valley. Whoosh! That dazzling golden light pierced through the layers of black fog and demon qi, and rushed into the sky like fireworks before exploding. Swoosh! A golden dragon shadow as huge as a mountain appeared. It stretched out its 5 claws and displayed a divine and majestic aura. Seeing the golden dragon shadow appear, Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing and the rest were overjoyed and hurriedly gave orders. Marshal Ji has finally sent out the signal. Quick! Attack! Everyone attack! Kill! Kill your way into Black Wind Valley and kill all the remaining demons. Leave none alive. Following the orders of the 4 generals, the 400,000 soldiers let out an earth-shattering roar as they waved their weapons and rushed toward the Black Wind Valley like a tide. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, Ban Yunshan, and Tua Hai were the first to rush into Black Wind Valley. A huge black fog barrier blocked their path. This was the defensive array of Black Wind Valley. The four of them obeyed Ji Tianqing's instructions and hurriedly took out the Heavenly Thunder Talisman and the Holy Light Talisman. They injected their mana into the talisman to activate it and threw it at the Black Fog Barrier. Shwa! The Heavenly Thunder God Talisman burned, erupting with an incomparably violent energy fluctuation. A five-colored pillar of divine lightning appeared and crashed viciously toward the black mist barrier with the power to destroy everything. Boom! The 10,000-foot-long five-colored divine lightning struck the black fog barrier with a deafening roar of thunder. A huge hole was blasted in the indestructible black fog barrier on the spot. Dozens of cracks spread out in all directions. Immediately after, the Holy Light Talisman also burned and lit up with a holy white light that covered the sky. The Holy White Light's aura was not violent. It even made everyone feel refreshed, gentle, and warm. However, when the gigantic blazing white light beam hit the black fog barrier, a surprising reaction occurred. Holy white light burst forth, and as long as it came into contact with the black fog and devil chi, it would be purified without a trace. After a few breaths, a 10,000-foot wide gap appeared on the black fog barrier and was still expanding. The gap was clear and the black fog and demonic chi that filled the valley had all disappeared. The four generals and all the soldiers were pleasantly surprised when they saw this miraculous scene. They revealed expressions of disbelief. Soon everyone came back to their senses. The four generals took the lead and led the 100,000 soldiers under their command into the Black Wind Valley in a grandiose manner. Everyone originally thought that there would definitely be a fierce battle that would be very tragic. The demon race garrison in Black Wind Valley would definitely form a battle formation and charge forward dauntlessly to stop their invasion. However, when the soldiers charged into Black Wind Valley, they all revealed stunned expressions. The scene in front of them also shocked everyone. They saw that the vast and enormous Black Wind Valley was filled with dilapidated walls, collapsed houses, and palaces. The demon race's barracks were actually destroyed. Fire and smoke rose everywhere, and the ground was covered with cracks and holes. Countless demon race soldiers, either in groups of a few hundred or in groups of a few thousand, ran in panic in Black Wind Valley, constantly roaring in anger, despair, and fear. Seeing this scene, the human soldiers were dumbfounded and only felt that it was inconceivable. Wei Yu Yixianqing and the other three were also confused. They all sent voice transmissions to inquire about the situation. What's going on? Even if the demon race's barracks were destroyed, they shouldn't be utterly defeated? It's too unbelievable. Is this still the cruel, bloodthirsty, and heartless demon race? Heavens! What did those demon race experience? How could they be destroyed to such a state? Everyone look at the sky. It seems like Marshal Ji is being besieged. The four generals and many commanders raised their heads to look at the sky. They saw that in the depths of Black Wind Valley, about 100 miles away in the sky, there were more than 10 people fighting. At a glance, they were all demon race generals and blood god's sons who were crazily besieging a white figure. Although they were very far away, everyone could recognize that the white figure was Ji Tianqing. His clothes were full of bloodstains. Thus Wei Yu Yixianqing and the other three decisively gave orders. All troops, listen to orders. Kill the demon race with all your might. Leave no one alive. Capture Black Wind Valley with the fastest speed and kill all the demon race. After the order was passed down, the 400,000 human soldiers immediately charged towards the demon race army under the leadership of many commanders. As for Wei Yu Yixianqing and Tua Hai, they held their weapons and flew into the sky. Swoosh! 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 After 10 breaths, the four generals flew into the sky and rushed into the battlefield. They did their best to rescue Ji Tianqing. They used all their strength to wield their swords and sabers, releasing powerful magic arts to kill the dozen or so Devil Clan experts. However, those demon race generals and blood god sons were abnormally powerful. They fought for a long time and were not defeated. In the process, Ji Tianqing used thunderous means to kill 7 demon race generals and blood god sons. There were only 5 demon race experts left in the sky. They were all terrified and turned to flee in panic. Wei Yu Yixianqing and the other 3 were greatly relieved. Only then did they rush to Ji Tianqing's side. Chapter 2105. Previously, The four generals had seen Ji Tianqing being surrounded by many demons and covered in blood. They had thought that he was heavily injured and had been very worried. Only now did they know that he was not injured, and that his body was stained with the blood of demons. The four generals were greatly relieved after the false alarm. At the same time, they felt ashamed and self-deprecating. I saw Marshal Ji kill more than 300,000 demons with my own eyes. I've already seen his unparalleled power. Why am I still so worried today? Alas, our knowledge is still too shallow. It's our first time following Marshal Ji on an expedition, yet we're so nervous. In the eyes of all the soldiers, Marshal Ji is creating a miracle by leading troops to attack Black Wind Valley and sneaking in alone to assassinate people. But to Marshal Ji, this is all very common. Otherwise, how could he be so calm and collected? Just as the four generals were thinking, Ji Tianqing killed another 5 fleeing demon generals. Whoosh! He flew back to the four generals and asked with a dignified expression, "The battlefield is dangerous and you can lose your lives at any time. Why are you in a daze? Do you want to die?" Wei Yu Yi Xianqing and the others immediately came back to their senses and hurriedly bowed to apologize and explain. "Marshal Ji, please calm your anger. We have failed in our duty. We have witnessed Marshal Ji's power once again and were impressed by Marshal Ji's style. We were deeply shocked and lost our composure on the battlefield. Marshal Ji, please calm your anger. We will immediately lead troops to encircle and eliminate the remaining demons." Ji Tianqing glanced at the four and said expressionlessly, "Stop flattering me. Ben Shuai doesn't buy it. Ben Shuai has already killed more than 100,000 soldiers in Black Wind Valley. Ben Shuai has also destroyed more than half of the defensive structures and formations. Ben Shuai has killed almost all the demon generals and blood gods above the Tribulation Realm. The remaining 300,000 demons are like headless flies. They are utterly defeated. The four of you are responsible for encircling and eliminating the remaining demons. You must end the battle in the shortest time possible. Otherwise, our soldiers will be infected by the demon qi and poisonous miasma if they stay for too long." Black Wind Valley was filled with devil qi and poisonous fog. Only experts above the Tribulation Realm could remain unaffected. If ordinary human soldiers were to stay in the poisonous fog and devil qi for a long time, their bodies would definitely rot and turn into blood, and they would die in pain. What was worse was that the disease was contagious. Once it spread in the barracks, it would cause a terrifying disaster. It was precisely because of this that Black Wind Valley could become a powerful defensive line for the demon army. When Ji Tianqing proposed to attack Black Wind Valley, the generals were hesitant and fearful. Wei Yu Yi Xianqing and the other 3 hurriedly cupped their hands and bowed. Soon after, the 4 of them split up and commanded their soldiers to quickly encircle and annihilate the remaining demons. Ji Tianqing stood high up in the sky, surrounded by the poisonous fog and devil qi, and coldly stared at the valley. His divine sense spread out, enveloping a radius of 1,000 miles, monitoring every movement in the valley. At the same time, he crossed his hands and waved them, forming a mysterious incantation. He constantly shot out rays of sacred white light, scattering them in Black Wind Valley. The sacred white light scattered in the sky, and quickly expelled the poisonous fog and devil qi in the surroundings. In this way, the pressure on the human soldiers was greatly reduced. As time passed, the battle cries in Black Wind Valley gradually weakened, and the remaining demons became fewer and fewer. Ji Tianqing looked at the situation in the valley and estimated that the battle would end in another hour. But at this moment, his divine sense suddenly detected a trace of a strange aura. In the depths of the valley, 400 miles away from him, there was a weak aura of magic power. It was taking advantage of the chaos to escape underground, fleeing into the distance. Ji Tianqing immediately raised his eyebrows and flew away as fast as the aurora. He crossed the sky 15 miles with each step, and after 30 breaths, he arrived in the depths of the valley. The barracks in this area had long been reduced to ruins. Fires were burning everywhere, and black smoke billowed out. There were still 20 to 30,000 demons who were resisting stubbornly, resisting the encirclement of 80,000 human soldiers. The scene was very chaotic. Ji Tianqing ignored the 2 armies that were fighting. His divine sense probed into the depths of the ground and quickly captured that aura. It was a black sword shadow, which was rapidly traveling underground, and was about to escape the range of Black Wind Valley. Want to escape? Ji Tianqing murmured indifferently. His body turned into a golden light, and he immediately chased after it. Whoosh! With a flash of golden light, he burrowed into the ground, and chased after it with lightning speed. He had already mastered the 5 elements, and used the celestial chaos secret technique to merge with heaven and earth. Even if he was traveling underground with layers of rocks, it was as if he was walking on flat ground. His speed was unbelievably fast. In just 10 breaths, he had traveled 300 miles, and caught up with the Black Sword Shadow. The Black Sword Shadow also sensed his existence, and rushed out of the ground in a panic, and flew into the sky. Whoosh! With a flash of golden light, Ji Tianqing also rushed out of the ground, and flew into the sky. One man, one sword, flew into the dusky sky at the same time, and appeared in the sky above the gray wasteland. This was the north of Black Wind Valley, and it was a few hundred miles away from Black Wind Valley. The Black Sword Shadow was very frightened, and it actually ignited with blazing white flames, and its speed increased by more than 3 times. Unfortunately, Ji Tianqing was faster than it. Heaven capturing Dragon Claw. He let out a low roar, and with a wave of his hand, a huge golden dragon claw appeared, and grabbed the Black Sword Shadow. The Black Sword Shadow struggled with all its might, but it could not break free from the dragon claw's shackles, and was immediately caught by Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing took a closer look, and only then did he realize that the Black Sword Shadow was a half-meter-long black short sword. The short sword was a tribulation-grade magic treasure, and its shape was simple and strange, with a few array talismans carved on its surface. It was obvious that this was not a weapon of the demon race, but a magic treasure refined by humans. Most of the arrays on this sword focus on speed, and it's mainly used for flying. Ji Tianqing saw through the clues and could not help but frown. He knew very well that the short sword could not fly on its own, and someone must be hiding in the sword to control it. Therefore, he released a violent magic power, and brutally broke the defensive array of the short sword. Then his divine sense forced its way into the space inside the short sword, knocked out the person inside and grabbed him out. Swoosh! A human male wearing a long black robe and a large cloak appeared in front of Ji Tianqing. This person was covered from head to toe, and his aura was very gloomy and cold. If one did not use their divine sense to check, no one would think that he was a human. Ji Tianqing held the short sword, lifted the large cloak, and saw an old, withered face. This human elder's body was withered, and his face was ugly, and his aura was as gloomy as a venomous snake's. Ji Tianqing sized him up, and released a wave of divine sense to wake him up. The old man gradually regained consciousness, and with a swoosh, he opened his eyes and stared at Ji Tianqing with a malicious gaze, but he pursed his lips and did not say a word. Ji Tianqing stared at him with a sharp gaze and said in a playful tone, "As a human martial monarch, you are on the same side as the demon race, and after being captured by me you can still be so calm." Chapter 2106. The black-robed old man's reaction was originally very calm and indifferent, but when he heard Ji Tianqing's words, the corner of his eyes twitched, and a hint of fear flashed through his eyes. Obviously, Ji Tianqing relied on his powerful observation skills to determine so much information in an instant, which shocked him. The black-robed old man's change in expression naturally did not escape Ji Tianqing's eyes. He immediately revealed a playful sneer and asked again, "It seems that I guessed right. You do have a mission. With your strength at the 5th level of the Tribulation Passing Realm, you are a famous martial lord expert in the 3 divine kingdoms. Even in the demon army, you can be compared to the demon generals. However, I have never seen you make a move. You only wanted to take advantage of the chaos to escape. This means that you are not working for the demon race, and there are other forces behind you." The black-robed old man remained silent. He even closed his eyes and tried his best to maintain the calmness of his divine soul, not allowing Ji Tianqing to pry into the truth. Ji Tianqing carefully observed him and the short sword. After a while he continued, "You did not speak because you did not want to expose your accent. You dressed as a demon because you did not want to expose the flaws of your clothing style, so that I could not find out your origin. But don't forget that the humans of the three divine kingdoms have slight differences in body shape, facial features, hair, and bones. If I'm not wrong, you must be from the heaven and divine kingdom. His tone was cold and firm, containing strong confidence. The black-robed old man, who had been as calm as ice, suddenly trembled when he heard his last sentence. He suddenly opened his eyes and stared at Ji Tianqing with a malicious gaze. He grinned and sneered, "Ha!" As expected of the number one genius of the Luoshui divine kingdom, the greatest threat to the demon race. Ji Tianqing, your confidence and arrogance are truly unimaginable. But unfortunately you guessed wrong this time. The black-robed old man's voice was dry and hoarse, like two pieces of old bark rubbing against each other. It was very unpleasant to hear. At the same time, his accent clearly carried the flavor of the Luoshui divine kingdom, as if he was from an empire on the eastern coast. "You're finally willing to speak?" Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and said in a playful tone, "Since you know who I am, you should know my methods." If he told the truth, he would suffer less physical pain. "Of course, don't tell me you're from the Luoshui divine nation. This little trick is useless against me." The black-robed elder remained calm and sneered disdainfully. "People who walk in the shadows only believe in darkness and sharp blades. They disdain to belong to any divine kingdom." Ji Tianqing frowned slightly and looked at him deeply. He then lowered his head to look at the black dagger in his hand. Darkness and blades? He vaguely guessed that there was something strange about this short sword. However, the short sword had the black-robed old man's soul imprint, and only the black-robed old man could control the short sword. Or Ji Tianqing could kill the black-robed old man and wait for the soul imprint to dissipate before he could use this short sword. Ji Tianqing cast a spell with his left hand and was about to forcefully erase the soul imprint. The black-robed old man suddenly sneered, "Ha! If you forcefully erase the soul imprint, my soul will be damaged and I will lose my memory and become an idiot. At that time you'll never know my identity or my secret. Anyway, I'm already in your hands and my life and death are in your hands. Why don't we make a deal? Spare my life and let me go. I'll tell you my origin and secrets." Ji Tianqing immediately stopped and looked coldly at the black-robed old man. "This is your only chance." After saying that, he handed the short sword to the black-robed old man. The black-robed old man took the short sword and said, as expected of Ji Tianqing, "You're wise and courageous. Unfortunately, you're too confident. Ha! When he looked up and laughed crazily, Ji Tianqing realized that something was wrong and immediately reached out to grab the short sword. However, it was too late. The mysterious black short sword had been detonated by the black-robed old man. Boom! With a deafening sound, the black dagger instantly shattered into pieces that filled the sky, bursting into a huge ball of black flames. The black flame had a strange attribute. It was an extremely rare dark flame. The pitch-black flames enveloped Ji Tianqing, and the violent impact sent him flying backwards on the spot. However, he was already prepared and used his powerful magic power to protect his body. He was not injured by the impact. Swoosh! He flew more than 10 miles before stopping in the sky. When the dark flame dissipated, he quickly flew back to his previous position. He saw that the black short sword had been shattered into countless pieces and scattered on the scorched earth. The black-robed old man was lying in a deep pit more than 10 miles away. Only half of his bloody body was left and his body was covered with a layer of dust. He lay motionless in the pit. His body was badly mutilated and he was no longer breathing. Ji Tianqing quickly flew to his side and used his divine sense to check. He found that the old man's soul had been shattered. The explosion of the short sword only injured his physical body. The shattering of his soul was because he had chosen to commit suicide. Ji Tianqing frowned and his face became as cold as ice. Damn it! How could there be such a crazy person who did not care about his life? This old man was a death warrior. He would rather die than reveal his identity. He even wanted to destroy the secret. Thinking of this, he suddenly thought of something. That's right. That short sword and the old man's soul were fused together. It was his natal magic weapon. Not only did he use the short sword to escape, there must be a secret in it. The short sword was destroyed by the explosion. However, the things in the space of the sword might not be completely destroyed. Therefore, Ji Tianqing quickly released his divine sense to cover the wasteland within 100 miles and carefully searched the ruins. After a few minutes, he found more than 10 pieces of fragments. These fragments were of different sizes. The big ones were the size of a fingernail, and the small ones were only the size of a sesame seed. After careful inspection, Ji Tianqing found that 2 of them were fragments of the short sword and a few fragments of magic weapons. They were all useless. Only 2 fragments were valuable and attracted his attention. One of the dark brown metal fragments was the size of a fingernail. There were patterns engraved on the front and 2 incomplete seal characters on the north side. Ji Tianqing studied it for a while and recognized that it was the words shadow and blade. Shadow blade? Could it be the name of a force? This metal fragment is from the identity token? Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a while. He was not sure and checked the other fragment. This fragment was only the size of a sesame seed. It was a fragment of a jade slip used to transmit and record information. Under normal circumstances, after the jade slip is shattered, the information recorded in it will dissipate quickly. It will not dissipate immediately. There will be a process in a short period of time. This thought flashed through Ji Tianqing's mind. He quickly used his divine sense to explore the jade slip fragment. After a while, he read a message from the fragment. The plan has failed. The army has no leader. We must do something else. Chapter 2107. Ji Tianqing pondered with an indifferent expression. A golden flame surged out of his palm and burned the 2 fragments to ashes. He waved his hand, got up and stepped into the sky, flying towards Black Wind Valley. Although there was only half a sentence left in the Jade Scroll, there was no beginning or end. But he combined all the information and gradually sorted out the situation. Originally, I thought that the demon army was so eager to attack the Luoshui Divine Kingdom because of the return of the ancestor demon god. It needs slaughter and war to recover its strength as soon as possible. Now it seems that things are more complicated than I thought. There are actually human forces involved in this war and colluding with the demons. Those who can work with Dark North Mountain are either super martial forces like the Broken Sky Alliance or the 3 Divine Kingdoms. As for Ingren, I have never heard of this name. Unless he has the support of a super force behind him, then he has the right to add fuel to the fire. Although the appearance of the black-robed elder was just a small interlude, it did not have any impact on the Battle of Black Wind Valley. But through this, Ji Tianqing realized the complexity of the situation and buried a thorn in his heart. I have to be more careful in the future. Even if I expel the demon army, I can't let my guard down. Sooner or later, I will find out the force behind Ingren and see who is colluding with the demons. After a while, Ji Tianqing returned to Black Wind Valley. The battle was coming to an end. Only a few tens of thousands of demon soldiers were still stubbornly resisting, but they were quickly wiped out by the human army. The 4 generals ordered the soldiers to clean up the battlefield. They rushed to Ji Tianqing's side and excitedly reported the results of the battle. Reporting to General Ji, "Our army has achieved a complete victory in this battle. General Ji, we lost 60,000 soldiers, but killed more than 340,000 enemies and completely occupied Black Wind Valley." Ji Tianqing frowned and said calmly, "Wrong. We killed 450,000 enemies and completely wiped out the demons." "Ah." Ban Yunshan was stunned and said with a puzzled face, "General Ji, that's not right. We only killed 340,000 demons, and you personally killed 110,000 demons. This is your military merit. We do not dare to claim it." Wei Yu and Yi Xianqing hurriedly nodded in agreement. "That's right. Commander Ji, you have the greatest merit. We accept this wholeheartedly. We will definitely report this to Commander Xie and the Saint Emperor. If Marshal Ji had not killed his way into the Black Wind Valley alone, how could we have achieved victory today? To tell you the truth, we've all picked up the merit with you. We're already ashamed to accept it, so how could we dare to think more?" Ji Tianqing waved his hand and chuckled. "Don't talk nonsense. Does Benshui still need that bit of merit? The 4 of you are willing to risk your lives and follow Benshui to attack Black Wind Valley. This is an additional reward for you. Don't forget that Bun Shui said that the rewards will be doubled before we set off. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others were pleasantly surprised, but they were also ashamed and uneasy. Many thanks for Marshal Ji's grace, but this general's heart is uneasy. Marshal Ji, from now on we will follow your lead. We are willing to go through fire and water for you. Ji Tianqing nodded and said in a dignified tone, don't decline anymore. This matter is settled. Return to the Celestial Overlook Pass. With that he took the lead and stepped into the sky. His clothes fluttered as he flew towards the south. The four generals arranged the aftermath and quickly followed him back to the Celestial Overlook Pass. After an hour, the news of the victory in Black Wind Valley spread throughout the Celestial Overlook Pass. Not only Xia Wudao and the other 20 generals were shocked, but they also found it unbelievable. Even the million soldiers in the pass were shocked to the extreme. They found it hard to believe. When the four generals led the army back, the million soldiers had no choice but to accept this reality. In an instant, the entire Celestial Overlook Pass was in an uproar. Everyone was immersed in shock and surprise as they discussed this matter excitedly. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, Ban Yunshan, and the rest, as well as the 300,000 soldiers who returned in triumph, did not hide the details of the battle. Everyone was filled with pride as they recounted the events of the battle to others. They praised Ji Tianqing as if he was a god who had descended from the heavens and was extremely powerful. Ji Tianqing's fame and achievements once again shocked the entire Celestial Overlook Pass. More than 2 million soldiers were filled with admiration and respect for him. One day later, Marshal Xia Wudao gathered all the generals and awarded them in front of the public square. All the soldiers who participated in the battle were rewarded with double the military merits. They were also praised by Xia Wudao in front of everyone. Not only did these people receive military honors, but they also received money. As such, the soldiers who participated in the battle became the focus of the entire scene. They were envied by the 2 million soldiers. After the award ceremony ended, Xia Wudao was busy with the aftermath of the battle. Of the soldiers who participated in the war, those who should be promoted were promoted, those who should be promoted were promoted, and those who should be compensated were compensated. Everything was proceeding in an orderly manner. Xia Wudao might not have much ability in the battle, but he was a rare expert in managing the overall situation and arranging the rear affairs. Ji Tianqing did not have the time to care about these matters. He left them all to Xia Wudao. He stayed in his residence to rest. At the same time, he studied the situation of the battle and the defensive arrangements and thought about his next move. Unknowingly, another day had passed. Xia Wudao had finished dealing with the rewards and compensation for the soldiers who participated in the battle. The bustling Celestial Overlook Pass gradually calmed down. However, at this moment, an exciting news came from the Marshal's palace. It ignited everyone's enthusiasm once again. Deputy Marshal Ji Tianqing announced that they would set off again in 2 days. This time he would lead 500,000 soldiers. As for which stronghold or barracks they would attack, it was still a secret. When the million soldiers heard the news, they were so excited that they could not sleep. Their blood was burning. Countless soldiers rushed to the barracks of the commanders, requesting to participate in the battle and follow Ji Tianqing. The commanders were under pressure and could only rush to the general's residence overnight to ask for the soldiers' orders. However, when the commanders arrived at the general's residence, they found that the generals were long gone. It turned out that when the 20 generals heard the news, they all put down their work and rushed to the marshal's palace. In the marshal's palace, Ji Tianqing's bedroom was brightly lit. He sat in the study brewing a cup of hot tea. He held a military book and read it quietly. Wei Yu stood by his side like a guard. His expression was respectful and strict. Outside the door of the sleeping chamber, more than 20 armored generals were gathered in groups of 3 to 5, discussing the matter of the expedition. They wanted to see Ji Tianqing and request to join the battle. However, the guards at the door stopped everyone and did not allow anyone to enter. The generals were noisy and discussed for a long time. However, Ji Tianqing did not appear. Half an hour later, in the middle of the night, only one person came to the gate. Everyone took a closer look and saw that it was General Wei Yu. Wei Yu looked at the anxious generals and said expressionlessly, Marshal Ji is thinking about important military matters. Generals, please be quiet and do not make any noise. Chapter 2108. More than 20 generals had rushed over excitedly to see Ji Tianqing, but they were all blocked outside the door. After waiting for half an hour, he was already impatient and unable to wait any longer. Now that Wei Yu had finally appeared, he had reprimanded everyone and even wanted them to line up. The expressions of the generals immediately changed. They were rather dissatisfied and began to discuss secretly. Damn it! Wei Yu is a general like us. Now that he has become Marshal Ji's confidant, he dares to reprimand us. Sigh. Who asked us to ask for help? Even if Marshal Ji and Wei Yu give us a hard time, we have to endure it. Previously, when Marshal Ji wanted to attack Black Wind Valley, we all dissuaded and opposed it. Only Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing and the other two followed Marshal Ji to battle. If it was anyone else, they would treat Wei Yu as a trusted aide and would inevitably embarrass us. A general with a full beard said angrily, "Isn't this an obvious humiliation to us? I can't take this lying down. At most, I'll just return to the barracks and stay." Another middle-aged general quickly nodded in agreement and said with a smile, "Yes, yes, yes. How can you take this lying down? Quickly return to the barracks and rest." Bah! The bearded general glared at him and said, "Do you think I'm stupid? If I return to the barracks to rest, you will have the chance to follow Marshal Ji to battle. As long as you can follow Marshal Ji to battle, it's like picking up military merits with your eyes closed. Furthermore, it's double the reward. Only a fool wouldn't go. If Marshal Ji wants to humiliate me, then humiliate me with all your might. As long as I can participate in the battle, even if Marshal Ji slaps me in public, I'm willing." The bearded general's words were unpleasant, but none of the generals present laughed at him. It was because everyone had the same thoughts and ideas. As long as they could follow Ji Tianqing to battle, even if they had to kneel in public, it was fine. Kneeling to a godly person like Ji Tianqing was just a form of worship. It was not shameful. If they could follow him to battle, they would definitely have outstanding military merits. Who wouldn't be tempted by the rewards? Although the generals had some complaints and discussed secretly, they all waited patiently. However, they were all patient. They quietly lined up in a long line and waited patiently. When Wei Yu saw that everyone had lined up, he revealed a playful smile and turned to enter the sleeping chamber. A moment later, he returned to the study and stood beside Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing asked without raising his head. "Ben Shuai only said that he would only bring along those who are sincere. You actually humiliated them like this. Aren't you afraid of arousing public anger?" Wei Yu smiled and cupped his hands. "General Ji, it is not that I acted on my own, but this is the only way to verify who is more sincere. Furthermore, this general is speaking up for you. Previously, when you wanted to lead the army into battle, they all made all sorts of excuses and prevaricated, as if they were afraid of death. After the great victory in the Black Wind Valley, now that you want to go to war, they are all licking their faces and asking to fight. This is really despicable. You are magnanimous and did not argue with them. However, this general feels that it's not worth it for you. That's why I purposely left them hanging so that they can reflect on themselves." Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "Since you've already done so, let's do as you say." Wei Yu cupped his hands and bowed before taking his leave. Ji Tianqing read a book for half the night before returning to his room to meditate and cultivate. For the next 2 days he did not show his face. He had been cultivating. As for the 20 or so generals, they had been waiting in line outside the gate. On the first day, the generals were resentful but could still wait patiently. However, on the second day, the news spread throughout the camp, causing the million soldiers to discuss animatedly. The generals felt that they had become a laughingstock and could not suppress their resentment and anger. One after another, some of them left. There were still a few generals who were indignant. They turned and ran to Xia Wudao to complain. There was no need to doubt the result. These generals did not please either side and were reprimanded by Xia Wudao. On the morning of the third day, it was time for Ji Tianqing to go to war. At this time, the 20 or so generals had basically all left. Only the last general was still standing outside the gate, waiting bitterly. He stood there for 2 days and 2 nights without moving a single step. Moreover, his eyes were closed and his expression was calm. No matter how angry the other generals were and how the soldiers in the camp mocked him behind his back, he turned a deaf ear. Finally, Ji Tianqing appeared when the first ray of light shone in the morning. He stepped out of the sleeping quarters with a refreshed expression and came to the gate. Looking at the figure at the gate, he said in a playful tone, "Bun Shuai thought that the generals could not bear the humiliation and had all left in anger. I did not expect that there would be a thick-skinned one who stayed. You, what is your name?" The middle-aged general in blue armor saluted with a solemn expression and said calmly, "This general, Shang Pingji, greets Marshal Ji." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "Bun Shuai said that you were thick-skinned, but you are still able to take it with equanimity. It is rare to see such indifference. I think you must be someone with a story, but Bun Shuai is not interested in your story. Go gather the troops under your command and gather them outside the pass. Get ready to set out." Shang Pingji originally thought that Ji Tianqing would ask about his experience, but he did not expect that Ji Tianqing was not interested at all. Marshal Ji is indeed not an ordinary person. This general is impressed. This general will take his leave. After he bowed, he left in satisfaction and went to prepare the army for war. After he left, Wei Yu came to Ji Tianqing's side and said in a low voice, "Marshal Ji, this General Shang Pingji has never been very sociable. He is very dull and reserved. Among all the generals, he is the most inconspicuous." Without waiting for him to finish, Ji Tianqing waved his hand and interrupted, "Bun Shuai is only a passerby. He is only responsible for leading you to victory and driving away the demon army. As for the stories and experiences of the soldiers, Bun Shuai is not interested. In half a month, Bun Shuai will leave the Celestial Overlook Pass and head to the Qiang Empire." Wei Yu was startled and showed a look of deep regret, but he felt relieved after thinking for a while. He quickly adjusted his mentality and prepared the troops for war. Half an hour later, the 500,000 soldiers gathered outside the Celestial Overlook Pass and set off valiantly. The 5 generals leading the troops were Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, Ban Yunshan, Tua Hai, and Shang Pingji, who had just joined. This time Ji Tianqing's target was the west camp of the demon army. The west camp was at the edge of the wilderness and was thousands of miles away from the Celestial Overlook Pass. There were millions of soldiers stationed there and the defense was extremely tight. After the soldiers set off, they found out that their target was actually the west camp. They were all shocked and worried. Using 500,000 soldiers to attack the millions of heavily guarded soldiers was undoubtedly like throwing an egg against a rock and seeking their own death. Fortunately, the leader was Ji Tianqing, the legendary killing god. If Xia Wudao was the leader, the soldiers would have been in an uproar and even collapsed and disbanded. This mission was unusual. Ji Tianqing also changed his strategy. He used the world in the Sword of Burial of Heaven to bring 5 generals and more than 20 commanders to infiltrate the west camp of the demon army. Chapter 2109. This was an unprecedented and almost suicidal war. An army of 500,000 lay in ambush outside the western camp, waiting for Ji Tianqing's order to attack. Ji Tianqing used the Sword of Burial of Heaven to bring 5 generals and 20-some commanders into the western camp. This camp was surrounded by mountains, and 300 li to the east was a vast plain. An army of more than 1 million demons occupied a valley of 300 li in circumference. At a glance, one could see that the valley was densely packed with black stone houses and palaces. Countless minarets and watchtowers stood in the military camp. There were also many scouts in blood-red armor patrolling in the sky, monitoring the movements in the surroundings. The skull and blood banner in the camp fluttered in the wind, and the air was filled with thick demonic mist and black qi. A massive fortress of 300 li in circumference enveloped the entire valley, operating day and night. Ji Tianqing used a secret technique to pass through the black fortress and enter the camp. He was in no hurry to assassinate the demon generals. First, he hid in the shadows and observed the defensive array. He quickly thought of a way to break it and found several weak points. Then, he ordered the 5 generals in the sword world to prepare their talismans. In a little while, when he wreaked havoc in the camp, The 5 generals would use this chance to destroy the defensive array. In addition, the 20-some commanders would each have their own mission to destroy the defensive fortifications and arrays in the camp. 2 hours later, Ji Tianqing circled around the camp and made proper arrangements for the 5 generals and the 20 or so commanders. Everyone used invisibility talismans to hide their tracks in qi, hiding in different locations and nodes, waiting for the operation to begin. Ji Tianqing left alone, making his way to the center of the camp, preparing to assassinate the demon generals and experts. But just as he made his way to the center of the camp and prepared to infiltrate a massive palace, a horn sounded. At this moment, the sound of a horn came from the camp. A scout had sent out a warning signal. The entire demon camp was alarmed. Countless armored and sword-wielding scouts flew into the air, seething with killing intent, and began to search the area. On the ground, one demon army after another rapidly gathered and set off. In a short span of 100 breaths, 400,000 demons had split into 4 armies and arrived at the edges of the camp. They had all activated their defensive fortifications and formations, and were in a defensive posture, waiting for the enemy to come. The entire demon camp immediately entered a state of combat readiness, like a fully drawn bow, ready to explode with astounding power at any moment. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing immediately understood. The soldiers lying in ambush around the camp must have been discovered by the demon scouts, causing the demon army to be on guard. Damn it! The entire camp is on alert. Even if I create chaos, the army may not be able to charge in. Ji Tianqing murmured with a solemn expression. Worry flashed across his eyes. At the same time, Wei Yu Yi Xianqing and the others who were hiding in the surroundings of the camp and waiting for an opportunity to destroy the grand formation were burning with anxiety and worry to the extreme. The situation was extremely dangerous. If they were not careful, the 500,000-strong army led by Ji Tianqing would be buried here. Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a moment, then resolutely decided to carry out the original plan. He remained invisible and quietly entered the palace, searching for traces of the demon generals. In his opinion, the demon generals would definitely hold an emergency meeting when they learned that the human army outside the camp had been discovered. The facts proved that he had guessed correctly. When he sneaked into the second floor of the palace, he detected the auras of more than a dozen experts in a heavily guarded secret room. The secret room had a defensive array, and there were more than 20 elite guards around it. Ji Tianqing quietly crept to the door of the secret room to investigate the situation inside. He saw 16 Tribulation Transcendence Realm demon experts sitting around a long stone table. These were all demon generals. Most of them wore battle armor, and a few wore black robes. The leader was a middle-aged demon man who was as strong as an iron tower and looked like an old bear. This person's strength had reached the 7th level of the Tribulation Transcendence Realm. He was Demon Lord Warsoul, one of the top 10 of the 36 demon lords. At the same time, he was also the main general of the West Camp. The strength of the other 15 demon generals was between the 2nd and 5th level of the Tribulation Transcendence Realm. Just as Ji Tianqing expected, more than a dozen demon generals had secretly gathered to discuss countermeasures. Just now, the scouts reported that the human army has been discovered outside the camp. There are at least 400,000 of them. Are the humans crazy? How dare they attack us with only 400,000 soldiers? It must be Ji Tianqing. Only a lunatic would dare to do such a crazy thing. He is digging his own grave. Let's defend with all our strength. I want to see how the 400,000 human army can kill their way into the camp. Everyone, don't forget Ji Tianqing's usual tricks. He will definitely sneak into the camp first to create a disaster and assassinate us and the Blood God. Previously, when he saved the White Frost Empire, he did this and won all the battles without a single defeat. It is said that the Azura Demon Saint and Xuepao Patriarch were defeated by Ji Tianqing. His strength has already reached the Saint Realm. Even if we join forces, we can't defeat him. We are no match for him. But does he dare to break into the camp alone and face millions of soldiers? More than a dozen demon generals argued endlessly. Some advocated to defend with all their strength, while others suggested to ambush Ji Tianqing together. In a short time they could not reach a consensus. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianqing quietly released the power of his divine soul. It turned into more than 20 invisible arrows and attacked the guards around the secret chamber. Swish! Swish! In the next moment, more than 20 demon guards were all hit by the arrows. Their divine souls were shattered on the spot, and they died instantly. Their corpses were cut off and slowly fell to the ground, making slight bumping sounds. Even so, some of the demon generals in the secret chamber were alarmed. One of the demon generals suddenly stood up and shouted in a low voice, "Something is happening." More than a dozen demon generals quieted down and released their divine senses to check the situation outside the secret chamber. Seeing that more than 20 guards were dead, everyone's expression changed drastically, and they all let out exclamations and shouts. "Enemy attack! It's Ji Tianqing! It must be him! Don't panic, everyone! Let's join forces to deal with him! We can definitely hold him back." In a moment, more than a dozen demon generals took out their weapons and magic treasures. They were on high alert and vigilant. Ji Tianqing sneered and said in a low voice, "All of you are here. Saves me the trouble of looking for you. Now I will send all of you to hell." As he spoke, he held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and slashed at the door of the secret chamber. Heavenly Dragon Slash. Following Ji Tianqing's cold shout, a dazzling golden light lit up behind him, and a soaring golden dragon's shadow appeared. Roar! The five-clawed golden dragon let out a high-pitched dragon roar. The sword of burial of heaven also slashed out a giant golden sword that was 100 meters long and slashed at the black secret chamber. Chapter 21:10. A thunderous sound exploded in the depths of the palace. At that moment, the defensive array of the secret room was destroyed by the giant golden sword. The sturdy black stone secret room was also split in half by the giant sword, and shattered stones flew everywhere. A deafening sound spread throughout the entire Devil Race's camp. The destructive shockwave instantly destroyed the entire palace, causing it to collapse into ruins. The entire camp began to tremble, and cracks began to appear on the ground. In the dust, Ji Tianqing, wrapped in golden light, soared into the sky. Celestial Dragon Tyrant Body. He roared, and a sacred golden light surged out of his body. His body immediately became a dozen times larger. In a flash, he became a 30-meter-tall golden-armored giant, exuding a violent and domineering aura. The golden armor on the surface of his body was made up of hundreds of dragon scales. It looked very mighty and shocking. At the same time, his defense, strength, and speed had increased by more than 5 times. He stood proudly above the ruins, holding the giant burial of heaven sword in his right hand. He pointed it at the ground and let out an earth-shaking roar. "Today Ji Tianqing will kill 1,000,000 demons and teach North Underworld Mountain an unforgettable lesson." His voice was like rolling thunder, reverberating in the sky above the west camp, shaking the eardrums of every demon. Countless people looked up at the sky, glaring at him and roaring angrily. In the ruins under Ji Tianqing's feet, a scarlet demon light lit up again, and there was a cracking sound. Demon Monarch War Soul and the 6 demon generals pushed aside the rubble in a sorry state and staggered out. The sword just now had killed several demon generals on the spot, but Demon Monarch War Soul and the 6 demon generals were only seriously injured, and did not die on the spot. The 7 of them were covered in blood, and they were severely injured. After rushing out of the ruins, they did not dare to attack Ji Tianqing at all, and immediately scattered and fled. But Ji Tianqing's left palm struck out 5-colored divine lightning, and his right hand swung the sword 49 times. Whoosh! 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 49 silver sword lights blossomed like lotuses and struck the 6 demon generals. The 6 demon generals were killed on the spot by the sword light. Their corpses turned into minced meat and blood, and their divine souls were also shattered. At the same time, the 5-colored divine lightning struck Demon Monarch War Soul, turning him into a charred corpse. His corpse fell from the sky and smashed into a palace, shattering into a pile of debris. Demon Monarch War Soul was also killed by the 5-colored divine lightning. Ji Tianqing raised his head and looked around. He saw that the sky was filled with the figures of the Devil Race experts, who were rushing over to kill him like a tide. In the black fog not far away, there were a few invisible blood gods illusions sneaking over, preparing to launch a sneak attack. On the ground, tens of thousands of demon soldiers had gathered into 9 square formations. They were controlling the demon Dao formations and releasing destructive attacks. In an instant, the sky was filled with layers of demonic shadows and murderous auras. Countless rays of bloody light, demonic light, and magical light flooded over like a flood. Ji Tianqing fell into a tight encirclement and was about to be drowned out by the tens of thousands of devil soldiers. However, he did not panic in the face of danger. His expression did not change. He ignored all the attacks. His left hand formed a seal and his right hand waved the sword of burial of heaven, using his trump card. Unstoppable heavenly lightning. Under his control, all the lightning energy within a radius of 20,000 miles was gathered together. Terrifying heavenly lightning also fell from the 9 heavens. Hundreds of heavenly thunder light pillars struck down from the sky. The dazzling lightning illuminated the entire camp. Boom! 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 The lightning poured down from the sky, covering a radius of 50 miles and exploding with deafening sounds. With Ji Tianqing as the center, the area within 50 miles became a sea of lightning. The magical attacks of tens of thousands of devil soldiers were all shattered by the lightning. Countless houses and buildings were blasted into smithereens, and the ground was scorched. Batch after batch of devil soldiers were struck into charcoal and fell to the ground. It was as if doomsday had arrived, and the world was about to be destroyed. Except for Ji Tianqing, no one could withstand such a terrifying heavenly lightning bombardment. After a full 10 breaths, the earth-shattering sounds gradually dissipated. The lightning and smoke that pervaded the camp also gradually disappeared. Ji Tianqing's figure appeared in the sky once again. He was 10 feet tall, shining with golden light, and exuding a mighty and sacred aura. The camp under his feet had become scorched earth, and all that could be seen were ruins. The dark and smoking ground was covered with deep pits and cracks, and there were broken walls and black ashes everywhere. Not only were the tens of thousands of devil soldiers that besieged him killed, but even the devil soldiers that were closer to him were also killed. There were also tens of thousands of devil soldiers who were affected by the power of the heavenly lightning bombardment. It was a scene of heavy casualties. For a moment, the entire devil camp was silent. Hundreds of thousands of people were horrified. They stared at the sky dumbfounded and stared at Ji Tianqing. Their purple and blood-red eyes were filled with unparalleled terror and fear. Such an unkillable guy could trigger the power of the heavenly lightning. He was simply a killing machine on the battlefield, an absolute killing god. Every devil felt a strong sense of powerlessness from the bottom of their hearts. They could do nothing to Ji Tianqing, but Ji Tianqing could slaughter them wantonly. This was simply too sullen, making people vomit blood in anger. After a moment of silence, the devil soldiers all around all let out roars of grief and indignation, cursing wildly. There were even many experts and warriors who were not afraid of death, charging over dauntlessly. Like a black wave, they drowned Ji Tianqing's figure. Ji Tianqing's left hand brandished a fist, and his right hand brandished a sword, fighting fiercely in the crowd. Bam bam bam. Each fist light and palm shadow would smash a pile of devils into pieces, splattering minced meat and blood all over the sky. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. The burial of heaven sword scattered sword light all over the sky. Sometimes it formed a fierce sword array, sometimes it condensed into brilliant starlight, and sometimes it turned into an ancient divine beast, bursting with terrifying power. But any devil that was swept by the sword light could not escape the fate of being smashed to pieces. Tens of thousands of devil experts besieged Ji Tianqing, but no one could block one of his moves. And the attacks released by the devil experts were very difficult to hit Ji Tianqing. He basically dodged all of them. Even if there were some magical attacks that did hit him, it was like scratching an itch, not causing him any injury. Ji Tianqing fought fiercely in the sky, like a fierce tiger in a flock of sheep, sweeping everything in his path, unparalleled in his slaughter. In a short quarter of an hour, he actually killed nearly 200,000 devils. Of the remaining 700,000 devils, 400,000 were guarding the 4 directions of the camp. The other 300,000 were thinking of ways to deal with Ji Tianqing, even forming battle formations to besiege him. But these were all useless. The divine might of the golden dragon was clearly displayed. This was the signal that Ji Tianqing and the generals had agreed upon. Since the signal had been sent out, it meant that the time had come. Without any hesitation, Wei Yu Yixianqing and the others immediately ignited the talismans in their hands. In the next moment, dozens of divine thunder talismans and divine light talismans exploded under the defensive formation around the camp. Boom, 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 boom. With the deafening explosion, dazzling lightning and divine white light immediately illuminated the entire camp. The dark sky within a radius of a few hundred miles became dazzling. The light was so dazzling that people could not open their eyes. The terrifying explosion not only brought about loud sounds and dazzling light, but also astonishing destructive power. The defensive formation around the camp was immediately blasted with more than a dozen holes and gaps. The entire formation shook violently, and many cracks appeared on its surface. But this was only the beginning of the destruction and disaster. Ji Tianqing had distributed more than 100 talismans to the generals. The 5 generals and more than 20 generals followed closely behind and released the star talismans. Boom, 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 boom. There was another earth-shattering explosion around the camp. The silver light of the stars soared into the sky, like the bright moon in the sky. The brilliant star divine fire tore open the gap in the defensive formation and expanded it by several times. Tens of thousands of devil soldiers guarding the gap were also engulfed by the star divine fire and burned to ashes on the spot. After this round of bombardment, the defensive grand formation, which was already broken, became riddled with holes and extremely tattered. Wei Yu Yixianqing and the others had completed their mission. They immediately sent out the signal and ordered the army outside the camp to attack. In the next moment, the 500,000 human soldiers lying in ambush outside the camp let out shocking battle cries and surged towards the demon camp like a tide. The human army had finally attacked. The final battle had arrived. Wei Yu Yixianqing and the others firmly guarded the gap in the defensive formation and did their best to kill the demon soldiers that came to stop them. Although there were only 20 or so of them, and it was impossible for them to stop the charge of tens of thousands of soldiers, they needed to buy time. However, what they needed to do was to buy time. In just 100 breaths of time, the human army would be able to break into the camp. Fierce battles continued to take place. The 20 or so human generals were besieged by large numbers of demon soldiers and suffered destructive blows. They were quickly wounded by the demon soldiers. Their bodies were covered in blood, and their arms and legs were even cut off. But they stubbornly held on with their strong willpower. Finally, 100 breaths of time was up. The 500,000 human soldiers successfully passed through the gap in the formation and charged into the demon camp. When the two armies met, they immediately engaged in the fiercest battle. At the same time, Ji Tianqing, deep in the camp, increased the pace of his attack. He summoned Lan Kuan, forefather Sanju, and the Golden Mountain King to charge with him and slaughter the demon soldiers on the ground. Lan Kuan was as large as a mountain. It sprayed out icy flames and rampaged across the battlefield. Forefather Sanju turned into a giant tree that was 10,000 zhang tall. He waved his 100,000 branches and swept through everything like sharp swords. He pushed forward. Everywhere he passed, all obstacles were flattened. No matter if it was the broken walls, the fortifications, or the bodies of the demon soldiers, they were all crushed to pieces. The Golden Mountain King roared excitedly. He swung his enormous golden hammer and smashed piles of demon soldiers. Each time the hammer smashed down, a deep pit would be left in the ground. The bottom of the pit was filled with demon corpses. His courageous charge was more like a game of whack-a-mole. As time passed, the casualties of the demon army increased. The scales of victory tilted in favor of the humans and gradually stabilized. This great battle that shook the heavens and earth continued for an entire day. Only in the middle of the night did the battle come to an end. All of the western camp had been completely destroyed. It had been flattened by the shockwaves of the battle. The million-strong demon army had been completely wiped out. Only 20,000 remained and they had fled in all directions. Of the 500,000 human soldiers, only 120,000 had died. The 5 generals were all heavily wounded. Of the 20-plus commanders, 5 had died in battle. While this loss seemed very heavy, Compared to the achievement of destroying the million-strong demon army, this was an inconceivable victory. After the battle ended, the hundreds of thousands of human soldiers raised their weapons and cheered at the top of their lungs. Marshal Ji is mighty. The god of death is invincible. With Marshal Ji leading the army, our race will win. Similar cheers and shouts erupted like a mountain torrent, reverberating endlessly between the heavens and the earth, shaking one's eardrums. Chapter 21:12. The soldiers only knew that this battle was a complete victory. Ji Tianqing had personally killed 400,000 demons. His reputation as the Asura would spread throughout the world. Everyone was ecstatic and they admired Ji Tianqing to the extreme. Only Ji Tianqing knew that he had gained more than that. After this battle, not only had his prestige reached the peak, his strength had also reached the peak after being tempered by killing. He was only a step away from breaking through to the martial sage realm. He could clearly feel that his strength had reached a critical point and he could break through to the martial sage realm at any time. It's a pity that the battle ended so quickly. I wish that a demon sage would appear and fight with me for 3,000 rounds. In that case, I would definitely be able to break through to the martial sage realm in the midst of the battle. Ji Tianqing stood in the sky and looked down at the battlefield as he muttered regretfully. At that moment, Wei Yu, Yixianqing, Shang Pingji and the rest flew to his side. The 5 generals were in a sorry state. Their armors were shattered, and their bodies were covered in blood and wounds. Their helmets were broken and their hair was messy. Their faces were covered in blood. Both Ban Yunshan and Tuahai had lost an arm and a leg. Their injuries were even more severe. However, the 5 of them were excited and emotional. General Ji, we have won the battle. Wei Yu cupped his fists towards Ji Tianqing and reported in a sonorous tone. This general has already sent out 50,000 elite troops to pursue and kill the fleeing devils. Yi Xianqing bowed respectfully and said excitedly, General Ji, we have used 500,000 soldiers to kill 1,000,000 demons. This is a miracle that only happens once in 100 years. It is a battle achievement that will shock the world. Shang Pingji's tone was also very excited. His eyes were shining as he said, among the 1,000,000 devils, 400,000 were killed by Marshal Ji. The name of the Asura is terrifying. After this battle, General Ji's name will spread throughout the world and shock the world. Although everyone was praising him, Ji Tianqing was very calm. He waved his hand and said, first, report the casualties. Quickly comfort the injured soldiers and deal with the aftermath. Also, all of you are seriously injured. Quickly return to the Celestial Lin Pass to recuperate. Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing and the rest cupped their fists to show that they understood. After an hour, the battlefield was cleaned up. Ji Tianqing and the other generals led 380,000 soldiers back to the Celestial Lin Pass. Ji Tianqing and a few other generals were flying in the sky as the army advanced on the wasteland in a grandiose manner. Yi Xuanqing's face was full of doubts. After hesitating for a long time, he could not help but ask the question in his heart. General Ji, when we attacked the West camp, I was worried about the demons' camp. The demon race had a total of 3 military camps. Apart from the western camp, there was also the northern camp and the eastern camp. The 3 camps were only half a day's distance. When we attacked the west camp, the other 2 camps must have received the news. Why didn't they send reinforcements? Hearing Yi Xuanqing's question, Wei Yu, Shang Pingji, and the others quickly nodded in agreement. Obviously, they also had the same question. Ji Tianqing looked at them and explained calmly. Firstly, even if the other 2 camps received the news, they would secretly laugh at us and think that we are seeking our own deaths. How can a mere 500,000 soldiers attack the West camp with 1,000,000 soldiers? Secondly, after the army set out, I also sent out 40,000 scouts to move around the 2 camps and keep a close watch on them. The generals of the 2 camps are not stupid. They would not dare to act rashly. Hearing his words, Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing and the rest were suddenly enlightened. No wonder. General Ji was already prepared and made arrangements in advance. 40,000 scouts. That's 4 times the usual number of soldiers. All the scouts were sent out and loitering outside the 2 camps. This is to tell them not to act rashly. If they send reinforcements to the West camp, The Celestial Lin Pass will send a large army to stop them. Haha. I didn't expect the situation to be under General Ji's control. If General Yi did not ask, we would not have thought of this. No wonder there is a rumor in the north that General Ji is the one who understands the demons the best. Seems like it is true. Everyone chatted and discussed along the way. Unknowingly, they had returned to the Celestial Lin Pass. Before the army reached the Celestial Lin Pass, the news of victory had been sent back. When the army entered the Celestial Lin Pass, the pass was filled with cheers and excitement. No one expected that Ji Tianqing would lead the army to attack the west camp. The most unbelievable thing was that he actually won. The soldiers who returned in triumph were all excited and proud. They enjoyed the glory and praise of the brave. The soldiers who stayed behind to guard the pass could only be envious and jealous. They discussed and asked about the battle. For the entire day, the Celestial Lin Pass was not quiet. On the second day, Xia Wudao gathered all the generals and held a commendation ceremony in the square. The soldiers who participated in the battle had made such great contributions. Of course, they would be rewarded handsomely. What's more, these soldiers had followed Ji Tianqing into battle and received double the rewards. Even the soldiers who died or were injured in the battle received double the compensation. After the news spread, the soldiers who participated in the battle became the target of everyone's jealousy. When the 20 generals who stayed behind to guard the pass saw Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others get promoted and rewarded again after a few days, they were so jealous that their eyes turned red. Especially Shang Pingji, who was the target of their jealousy. Previously, everyone lined up outside Ji Tianqing's door and requested to go to battle. Everyone could not bear the humiliation and left dejectedly. Only Shang Pingji was thick-skinned. He pestered Ji Tianqing and followed the army to battle. And now, he had become one of the 5 meritorious officials. He enjoyed the glory of bravery and was promoted and rewarded in front of everyone. Compared to the limitless glory now, his previous humiliation was not even worth mentioning. The 20 generals regretted it so much that their intestines turned green. They only hated themselves for not being thick-skinned enough. If they could be as shameless as Shang Pingji, they would be the ones receiving commendations, being conferred titles, and receiving double the military merits. In a short 3 days, the news of Ji Tianqing annihilating the million-strong demon army spread throughout the northern battlefield. The people of the Changlong Empire were wild with excitement. They were only waiting for Ji Tianqing to expel the demon army, and they could return to their homeland. The people of the Red Sun Empire were full of anticipation. They only hoped that Ji Tianqing would save them as soon as possible. Only the people of the White Frost Empire were the calmest. After all, they were numb to Ji Tianqing's legendary deeds. Even if someone said that Ji Tianqing poked a hole in the sky, they would accept it calmly. 3 days later, Ji Tianqing set off again. This time he still brought Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the other 3. He only led an army of 400,000 to attack a fortress. Many generals found Xia Wudao and begged him by all means, wanting to follow Ji Tianqing to battle. But Ji Tianqing said that Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others were reliable. They were all people he was used to using. He did not want to change to other generals. When he said this, all the generals felt despair and helplessness. They only hated that they were blind and did not follow Ji Tianqing decisively. Chapter 21:13. In half a month, Ji Tianqing went to battle 4 times. Every time he brought Wei Yu, Yi Xianqing, and the others to battle, and the result was a complete victory. Even though tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of soldiers would die in every battle. After 4 consecutive battles, more than half of the soldiers under the general's command had been killed. Ji Tianqing, on the other hand, asked Xia Wudao to transfer soldiers from the other generals to replenish the numbers. Anyway, he wanted to ensure that the general's subordinates were always at full strength. The other generals did not have any battles to fight and were idling in the Linxian Pass all day. Now that their soldiers were divided, how could they let it go? They all ran to find Xia Wudao to reason with them. The group of people was in an uproar and were full of resentment. Xia Wudao had a headache. Even if he used the authority of a general, he could not suppress the generals. Helpless, he could only think of a way. He publicly posted a notice in the Linxian Pass to recruit soldiers to join Wei Yu Yixianqing and the others. After the news was announced, the soldiers guarding the Linxian Pass were in an uproar. In just an hour, tens of thousands of people gathered in the square and enthusiastically responded to Xia Wudao's summons. After all, everyone knew that if they joined Wei Yu, Yixianqing, and the others, they would be able to follow Ji Tianqing to attack the strongholds and camps of the demon race and gain merits. Most importantly, Ji Tianqing was victorious in every battle and had never lost. After the victory, the rewards that the soldiers received were also doubled. All along, the soldiers of the Linxian Pass were very envious and jealous. Now that there was an opportunity in front of them, even a fool would know to fight for it. The problem was solved. Wei Yu Yixianqing and the other subordinates could recover to 100,000 before each battle. The soldiers also joined voluntarily, and the other generals had nothing to say. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. Ji Tianqing won 4 battles and captured 2 strongholds, as well as the north and east barracks. At least 1.5 million demons lost their lives in these 4 wars. Ji Tianqing had killed as many as 500,000 devils with his own hands. The demon army was completely routed. Only about 400,000 were left. They retreated from the celestial Overlook Mountain Pass and fled to the north. This time, Ji Tianqing did not have the intention to go into battle. He left the task of chasing after the remaining soldiers to Xia Wudao and the other generals. It was because he had received a communication jade slip last night. It was a black communication jade slip. It came from the north and carried a faint demonic aura. Without a doubt, it was Ji Ku who had sent him a message. For the past 2 years, regardless of whether there was any important information, Ji Ku would send him a message every month. This had already become a promise between the two, regardless of rain or shine. There wasn't much content in the jade slip, only 2 short sentences. However, it made Ji Tianqing frown and ponder for a long time. The demon race's holy city and Baiming Palace have been destroyed. They are currently recuperating. They have lost many battles in the north. The demon army is already thinking of retreating. They might retreat soon. Ji Tianqing sat alone in the secret chamber. He held the communication jade slip in his hand and pondered for a long time. The demon race's holy city was destroyed by Luo Shui's clone. The ancestor demon god and the 2 great demon sages were severely injured by Luo Shui's clone. The demon army's vitality was greatly damaged. They can only recuperate. Now that they are losing in the north, it is natural for them to retreat. However, the demon army still has the upper hand in the Scarlet Sun Empire. After the second demon sage Songyu escaped, he must be in the Scarlet Sun Empire. Why are they in a hurry to retreat? No. I have to hurry to the Scarlet Sun Empire and kill Songyu while he is severely injured. I can't let him retreat to Baiming Mountain. After making up his mind, Ji Tianqing started to prepare. The next morning, he went to the general's palace to look for Xia Wudao. Xia Wudao was in the meeting hall. He had gathered more than 20 generals to discuss the plan to chase after the remaining demons. After Ji Tianqing stepped into the hall, the generals quickly cupped their fists and bowed respectfully. Greetings, General Ji. Greetings, General Ji. Ji Tianqing stood in the middle of the hall and nodded to Xia Wudao. He said, General Xia, I am here today to bid farewell to everyone. Hearing this, Xia Wudao stood up with a bang. His face was full of shock. The generals in the hall were also stunned for a moment. Soon after, anxious, surprised, and reluctant expressions appeared on their faces. Xia Wudao looked at Ji Tianqing with a burning gaze and asked, Young Master Ji, why are you in such a hurry to leave? You have only been in the Immortal Pass for 20 days. You have been leading the army and bathing in blood. You have not had a good rest. Ben Shuai and the generals have not treated you well. They did not even have the chance to express their gratitude. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and smiled. All good things must come to an end. My mission has been completed. It is time to leave. Now that the demon army outside the Immortal Pass has been defeated and fled, it is a waste of time for me to stay. The people of the Scarlet Sun Empire are in danger. They are waiting for me to help them. I cannot delay. Xia Wudao nodded. That's right. The crisis in the Scarlet Sun Empire is not over yet. There is still the Heavenly Pass 100,000 miles away waiting for you. There were two main battlefields in the Changlong Empire. One was the Immortal Pass and the other was the Heavenly Pass. Ji Tianqing's original plan was to solve the crisis in the Immortal Pass first, then help the Heavenly Pass. But now he changed his mind. No, General Xia, please tell the Changlong Saint Emperor that I will not be going to the Heavenly Pass. I have something important to do. I must go to the Scarlet Sun Empire as soon as possible. Xia Wudao was stunned. He asked in confusion, but there are still 3 million demon soldiers outside the Heavenly Pass. Ji Tianqing said with certainty, the crisis in the Immortal Pass has been solved. After you have cleared the remaining demons, you can go to the Heavenly Pass. At that time your 5 million soldiers will join forces. Do you think you can't deal with 3 million demons? Moreover, there are internal problems in the demon race. Now the people are in chaos. They will withdraw soon. Hearing this, Xia Wudao was relieved. He nodded and said, I see. I understand. Then Xia Wudao stopped the meeting and led the generals to send Ji Tianqing off. He personally sent Ji Tianqing out of the meeting hall and to the square outside the hall. Young Master Ji, I won't say any more words of thanks. I will remember your kindness. If you need this old man's help in the future, just send me a message as soon as possible. This old man will definitely not refuse. Xia Wudao bowed to Ji Tianqing and said secretly, Young Master Ji, regarding the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains, please believe that I will always be a disciple of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. As long as the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains needs me, I will do my best to help you. Ji Tianqing looked at him deeply and nodded silently. Then Wei Yu Yixianqing, Ban Yunshan, Tuahai and Shangpingji walked in front of him and bowed to him respectfully. General Ji, it is this general's honor to meet you and fight alongside you in this life. General Ji, have a safe journey. I will always remember your kindness. If General Ji has any orders in the future, I will do my best. We are grateful that we decided to follow General Ji. But we are even more grateful to General Ji for giving us everything we have today. Without General Ji's support, we would not be where we are today. General Ji, no matter where you are, if you need anything in the future, just say the word and we will do our best. The 5 generals were also reluctant to let Ji Tianqing leave, but they knew that it was inevitable. They could only reveal the truest thoughts in their hearts at the moment of parting. Chapter 21:14. After leaving the Celestial Overlook Pass, Ji Tianqing flew into the sky and sped towards the east. Whether it was in the Empire of White Frost or the Celestial Overlook Pass, he was just a passerby. Whether it was Lu Baishuang's admiration and secret feelings, or the respect and loyalty of Wei Yu and the others, they were all worldly possessions to him. If an ordinary genius or powerhouse could reach such a level, they would already be successful and proud. But to Ji Tianqing, all of this would become a thing of the past. His future would not be limited to this world. Half a day later, Ji Tianqing flew over the Heavenly Mystery Pass. Even though the outside of the Heavenly Mystery Pass was filled with smoke, and the war was in full swing, but he had no intention of stopping and continued to fly towards the Scarlet Sun Empire. Just as he said, the danger of the Celestial Overlook Pass had been resolved, and there would be more than 2 million soldiers free. Together with the 3 million soldiers guarding the Heavenly Mystery Pass, how could the 5 million soldiers not defeat the 3 million demons? He did not need to worry about this at all. What he was most concerned about now was to rush to the Scarlet Sun Empire and kill the heavily injured demon sage Zhongyu. As long as he killed demon sage Zhongyu, the ancestor fiend Celestial would have no helpers for the next 10 years. Even if the North Underworld Mountain nurtured a new demon sage, it would not be a threat. The journey was boring and lonely, but Ji Tianqing was already used to it. Lan Kuan, old ancestor Sanju, and the Jinshang King were all cultivating in the sword world. The previous series of battles had also benefited them greatly. Their combat experience and strength had been greatly improved. Soon 10 days passed. Ji Tianqing entered the Scarlet Sun Empire and arrived at the Falling Moon Mountain Range. This vast and majestic mountain range was the barrier between the North Underworld Mountain and the Scarlet Sun Empire. Fortunately, this barrier had not been broken since the demons invaded the Luoshui divine nation. But in these 2 years, no less than 10 million human soldiers had died in the Falling Moon mountain range. The Falling Star Valley was the current front line. The mountain range and land in this area had long been razed to ruins and had been overturned several times. The soil on the ground had also been dyed dark red by blood. When Ji Tianqing left the Celestial Face Pass, the Changlong Saint Emperor received the news and immediately sent a message to the Scarlet Sun Empire. Therefore, when Ji Tianqing arrived at the Starfall Valley, the Scarlet Sun Empire was already prepared to welcome him. The soldiers of the Scarlet Sun Empire had been fighting a bloody battle for more than a year, but they were still unable to defeat the Devil Race's army. Instead, the situation was getting more and more dangerous. Ever since they knew that Ji Tianqing had participated in the war and won every battle, defeating the demon army, the soldiers and people of the Qiang Empire saw him as their savior. For many days and nights, the citizens of the Scarlet Sun Empire had been waiting for Ji Tianqing to save them from the sea of war. Now his savior had finally arrived. When the sun was setting, Ji Tianqing arrived at the mountain pass of the Starfall Valley. This valley was in the shape of a gourd. The entrance was narrow, but the inside was very spacious. It had a radius of 200 to 300 miles. More than 2 million human soldiers were stationed in the valley. Rows upon rows of houses and palaces formed a huge military camp. They were densely packed in the valley. At the entrance of the valley, there were more than 10,000 soldiers. They formed a grand guard of honor to welcome Ji Tianqing's arrival. The soldiers were in high spirits. They blew the loud bugle horn and played the inspiring drum music. They danced majestically with spears and halberds. Everyone's expression was filled with excitement and joy. It was as if they were welcoming their savior and worshipping the 9 heavens above. Ji Tianqing had always been indifferent to fame and fortune. He did not care about these empty titles. However, when he saw the scene at the entrance of the Starfall Valley, there were some ripples in his heart. He felt a little proud. In the valley, there were more than 10,000 soldiers waiting in formation. They were all looking at him with sparkling eyes and full of excitement. At a glance, there were all pitch-black armors, cold swords, spears, and halberds. They were all emitting a majestic aura. When Ji Tianqing stepped into the Starfall Valley, the soldiers cheered loudly. "Welcome to the Starfall Valley, General Ji." The cheers of 100,000 people converged into a huge sound wave. It was more terrifying than a tsunami and more shocking than thunder. Ji Tianqing stepped into the valley with majestic steps. He was greeted by an old man in a purple robe. He led more than 20 golden-armored generals and welcomed him with a smile. The crowd stood in front of him. The purple-robed old man cupped his hands and bowed. He smiled and said, "This old man is Du Changchang. I am the general of the Starfall Valley. Welcome, General Ji." Following that, more than 20 golden-armored generals also bowed respectfully. They said in a sonorous voice, "Welcome, General Ji." Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing was a little stunned. He was silent and did not say anything. In the past few months he had been thinking about how to fight, how to expel the demon army, and how to protect the Luoshui divine nation. He had never thought that after his consecutive victories, the name of the killing god would spread and cause such a huge commotion in the Luoshui divine nation. Today he finally saw it for himself. The more than 2 million soldiers in the Starfall Valley, whether it was General Du Changchang or the many soldiers, all respected him and warmly welcomed him. This was enough to prove that his position in the hearts of the people was higher than the Saint Emperor of a nation. He was like a god. He had never thought of becoming famous, of being praised by the people of the world, of being worshipped by millions of people. But now he had unintentionally done it. And this result was mainly caused by the invasion of the demon army. To Ji Tianqing this was a supreme honor and trust, but also a great pressure and responsibility. He became more and more determined to expel the demon army no matter what, and even destroy the entire North Underworld mountain. He hoped that in this world, the demon race would no longer cause chaos and bring disaster to the world. After a moment, Ji Tianqing nodded to the crowd. He raised his hand and said, "General Du, generals please rise." Du Changchang and the other generals stood up. Ji Tianqing smiled and said in a playful tone, "Just now I heard General Du and the other generals call me General Ji?" Du Changchang stroked his white beard and said with a smile, "General Ji, since you joined the war, you first helped the White Frost Empire expel the demon army, and then you helped the Changlong Empire resolve a crisis. No matter where you go, you hold the position of Deputy General. You have won every battle and have never lost. The number of demon race that died under your sword is at least over 1 million. Your name of killing God has long been spread throughout the world, respected and praised by the martial artists of my race. But we are all people in the military, so it is most appropriate to call you General Ji. Moreover, since you have come to the Starfall Valley, the position of Deputy General is yours. This old man and the 2 million soldiers are still looking forward to you taking charge of the situation, leading everyone to expel the demon race, and to victory." Du Changchang was a white-haired old man who had lived for nearly 2,000 years. He was a martial arts master with great prestige in the Scarlet Sun Empire. However, even a veteran martial sage like him was extremely respectful and courteous towards Ji Tianqing. He even addressed him with the words "Sir." Chapter 21:15. Ji Tianqing, Du Changchang, and the others exchanged greetings at the entrance of the valley for a while. Subsequently, Du Changchang introduced more than 20 golden-armored generals to Ji Tianqing. Most of these people were the elite generals of the Scarlet Sun Empire. They were all battle-hardened generals. Everyone was familiar with Ji Tianqing's legendary deeds. They respected and worshipped him very much, treating him as their idol. Even the eyes that looked at him were fiery and blazing, flickering with a bright light. Half an hour later, everyone escorted Ji Tianqing back to the Starfall Valley and entered the commander's palace. In the spacious and bright conference hall, there was a huge sand table in the middle. Normally, Du Changchang would gather all the generals here to discuss matters. After everyone entered the hall, Du Changchang pointed to the huge sand table and said to Ji Tianqing, "Commander Ji, this old man will immediately announce the news of your arrival and appoint you as the deputy commander. This is the defensive layout of the Starfall Valley and the demon army. The sand table marks the defensive situation of our army and the demon army in detail. You can study it. In addition, this old man has already prepared the information regarding the battle situation and the demon generals. After this old man arranges your residence, I will immediately send someone to deliver the jade slip to you so that you can understand the situation as soon as possible." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "Commander Du is very considerate. Many thanks." Du Changchang quickly waved his hand and said in a sincere tone, "Commander Ji is too polite. This old man dares not accept it. For you to come to the Starfall Valley to help, it is already our blessing and fortune." Ji Tianqing saw that he was about to say a lot of words of thanks again, so he quickly interrupted him. "All right, time is tight and the mission is important. Let's not talk about pleasantries. Commander Du, arrange my residence first. I also need some time to understand the situation in the Starfall Valley." "All right, then it's settled." Du Changchang liked his straightforwardness the most. He said happily, "This old man will arrange it for you immediately." Before Ji Tianqing came, he was very familiar with Ji Tianqing's legendary deeds. He had been very nervous, thinking about how to receive Ji Tianqing. After all, such godlike genius experts would always have unimaginable hobbies and strange temperaments. Du Changchang was afraid that his negligence or lack of care would anger Ji Tianqing. Now, seeing that Ji Tianqing was very amiable and did not make things difficult for him or put on airs, he finally felt relieved. Within a short span of 100 breaths, Du Changchang had arranged a place for Ji Tianqing to stay. His residence was within the commander-in-chief's palace. However, it was in the quietest and most magnificent palace at the back, and it was equipped with dozens of guards and young and beautiful maids. Du Changchang was a shrewd old man, and he considered things very thoroughly. The guards were young and handsome, and the maids were beautiful and charming. They were all intelligent and quick-witted, ready to offer themselves at any time. Du Changchang did this to please Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing saw all of this and felt a chill in his heart, and couldn't help muttering to himself, This old thing Du Changchang. He's becoming more and more cautious the longer he lives. I don't know what kind of dirty ideas he has in his head. Arranging more than 30 young and beautiful maids for me is one thing, but he even arranged more than 30 little white faces for me. What's going on? Do I look like that kind of person? After muttering to himself, he called out to his entourage in a dignified tone, a strange expression on his face as he scolded. The maids stay and the young guards withdraw. The attendant that Du Changchang had arranged for Yang Kai was a beautiful woman who looked to be about 30 years old. Her name was Guanji, and she was extremely charming. This woman was tall and sexy, with a pair of seductive eyes, and her entire body exuded an enchanting aura. From an 80-year-old man to an 8-year-old boy, it was difficult for anyone to refuse her gentle service. If a beautiful young girl was like a green plum, then she was like a ripe peach. She was wearing a fiery red dress. After respectfully listening to his orders, she hurriedly bowed and saluted. Since Marshal Ji has given the order, Guanji will naturally comply. Saying so, she walked to the door of the study and ordered all the male guards to withdraw. After passing on the order, she gracefully walked over to Ji Tianqing and said in a soft voice, "Marshal Ji must be tired after such a long journey. Guanji has already ordered the maids to prepare a hot spring for Marshal Ji to wash your body and relax your mind." Ji Tianqing was sitting in front of his desk, flipping through jade slips and books to understand the situation in Falling Star Valley. Suddenly hearing Guanji's words, he felt a little strange and raised his head to look at her. As soon as he looked up, he met Guanji's watery red phoenix eyes, and he felt as if he had fallen into a hot spring. Like a spring breeze, warm and comfortable. Even the depths of his soul faintly felt hot and throbbing. If his mind wasn't firm enough, he would have immediately turned into a ferocious wolf and pressed Guanji onto the desk, doing something indescribable. But Ji Tianqing's soul was extremely firm, and in an instant, he suppressed his evil thoughts and calmed his soul down. He coldly glanced at Guanji and said in a low voice, "You are not a human, but a descendant of the Mainu tribe that went extinct 1,000 years ago. You are born with the power to captivate souls and confuse people's hearts. Almost no man can escape your temptation. Moreover, you cultivate the Mainu soul enchanting art. So when you cultivate with a martial Tao master, you can absorb their strength." Hearing his words, Guanji's body immediately shook, as if she had been struck by lightning. The gentle flirtatious look in her eyes immediately disappeared, and her blushing and shy face turned a little pale. She stared at Ji Tianqing in disbelief, unable to believe that Ji Tianqing had seen through her with a single glance. In front of Ji Tianqing, all her disguises had been exposed, as if she was standing naked in a world of ice and snow. She felt fear from the bottom of her heart, and didn't dare look into Ji Tianqing's eyes. At this time, Ji Tianqing said in an indifferent tone, "You were born with a seductive art and are used to using your beauty to serve others, but Ben Shuai has always disdained such things and disdained to comment. Go back and tell Du Changchang that everyone is working for the Luo River Divine Kingdom, so he doesn't need to be so cautious. Ben Shuai will naturally do his best. If he dares to act smart again, don't blame Ben Shuai for holding him accountable." Guanji immediately recovered and knelt to the ground in fear and trepidation, sobbing as she said, "Commander Ji, please calm down. This lowly concubine has offended you. This lowly concubine deserves 10,000 deaths. But Commander Du went to great lengths to invite this lowly concubine to serve you. This lowly concubine is sincere and kind. I hope Commander Ji won't blame me. This lowly concubine promises to never offend you again in the future. I hope Commander Ji will be magnanimous and allow this lowly concubine to continue serving you." Ji Tianqing didn't raise his head and continued reading, his tone calm as he said, "Since this is your first offense and you were instructed by Du Changchang, Ben Shuai will spare you this time. If you want to stay by Ben Shuai's side and serve him, then put away your racial talent and seductive arts. Otherwise you will only be rejected by Ben Shuai." When Guanji saw him relent, she immediately breathed a sigh of relief and kowtowed as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. Chapter 21:16. After bowing and apologizing, Guanji really restrained herself a lot. The soul-sucking power she exuded, as well as the charm that originated from her soul, all disappeared without a trace. When she turned and left the study, she looked just like an ordinary woman. She was just more beautiful and charming than an ordinary woman. When her figure disappeared at the door of the study, Ji Tianqing raised his head and looked at her with a deep gaze. Then a black light flashed in his palm and the sword of Burial of Heaven appeared. Burial of Heaven, I have something to ask of you. He spoke to Buried Heaven, who was in the sword, through voice transmission. The next moment, Burial of Heaven was awakened and responded in a low voice. What's the matter? Ji Tianqing said calmly, I don't know what that old man Du Changchang is thinking, but he actually sent a descendant of the Cha Nu tribe to serve me. Suddenly hearing this sentence, Burial of Heaven was stunned for a moment and said in a stunned tone, 1,000 years have passed, but there are still descendants of the Cha Nu tribe active in the world? In this day and age, there are very few people who know the details of the Cha Nu tribe, right? Yes. Ji Tianqing nodded and said, 1,000 years ago, the Cha Nu tribe was on the verge of extinction, and was so weak that they could only rely on the great empires and martial Dao forces. This tribe, which is both good and evil, can not only support the empires, but also bring disaster to the world, causing chaos among the various races and making the people unable to make a living. Guanji is most likely attached to the imperial family of the Scarlet Sun Empire. Du Changchang is probably old and muddle-headed, so he made this decision because of her. She just left, so follow her secretly and see if she has any problems. Burial of Heaven pondered for a moment before agreeing. In the past, there were some grievances between you and the Cha Nu tribe. Although it was just a trivial matter to you, you may not take it to heart. But for the Cha Nu tribe, you destroyed their plan to attach themselves to the vast divine empire, causing them to be exiled and hated by everyone. Moreover, you even injured Empress Tantai of the Cha Nu tribe and almost crippled her seduction technique. Now that the descendant of the Cha Nu tribe is entangled with you, it seems that this is karma, alas. Ji Tianqing rolled his eyes and said snappily, Why do I feel like you're gloating? Back then, Empress Tantai of the Cha Nu tribe tried to seduce me and make me her servant. She even tried to bring chaos to the divine court of the divine kingdom of Taihao. How could I forgive her? Burial of Heaven said in a strange tone. Empress Tantai is a peerless beauty in the human world, and she was born with the ability to charm. In the words of you men, she is a beauty of the highest quality that only appears once in 10,000 years. She is the dream partner of millions of heroes. I'm offering myself as your pillow because I want to be together with you and cling onto the pillar of Heaven's mountain. But you don't understand the situation at all. You picked her up from the bed and threw her onto the square. What kind of humiliation is this? The other party was infuriated, so of course he would attack you. Yet you heavily injured her and almost crippled her seduction technique. Tell me, aren't you recklessly wasting God's gift? After that incident, I don't know how many men scolded you behind your back and envied you. Listening to Burial of Heaven talk about the past thousands of years ago, Ji Tianqing could only smile bitterly. The world knew my temperament back then. I used the sword as my companion, always alone. I only fell in love once in my life, but it didn't end well. I always despised women like Empress Tantai, so how could I have sex with her? Wouldn't it ruin the name of the Kenshin and make the world laugh at me? Burial of Heaven was silent for a moment, then stopped talking about this topic and said in a low voice, Your enmity with the Cha Nu tribe hasn't been eliminated. If your identity is leaked, it's hard to guarantee that the Cha Nu tribe won't retaliate. To be on the safe side, I'd better go and observe Guanji in person. I hope she just stumbled upon you by accident and didn't deliberately approach you. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly. The Cha Nu tribe has already died out, and now only a few scattered descendants exist in the world. I hope they don't make a mistake. If they really do harm to me, the entire Cha Nu tribe will become history. Burial of Heaven continued. Although I've recovered half of my strength and the sword spirit can leave the sword body, it can only move within a radius of 3,000 miles. I can follow Guanji and secretly observe her movements without being discovered by her. But if she leaves the range of 3,000 miles, I can't do anything. In short, you have to be careful and be careful. Ji Tianqing nodded to express his understanding. Burial of Heaven didn't say anything more and flew out of the sword body. turning into a wisp of invisible black qi and disappeared into the night sky. Ji Tianqing put away Burial of Heaven and continued to read the books and jade slips to understand the situation in the Starfall Valley. Unknowingly, a whole night passed. Ji Tianqing had been in the study, reading a mountain of information and jade slips without sleeping. Burial of Heaven was hidden in the night sky, quietly observing Guanji. To its surprise, Guanji had been in her residence in the backyard of the general's palace, meditating and cultivating without going out. She didn't do anything out of the ordinary. After dawn, she got up and washed up, then served Ji Tianqing according to the rules. Burial of Heaven secretly observed her for a whole day, but found nothing unusual, so it flew back to Burial of Heaven and reported the situation to Ji Tianqing. When Ji Tianqing heard the news, he didn't say anything and just muttered, "I hope I'm just being paranoid." After that, he devoted himself to the war, planning how to attack the demon camp. Late the next night, the general's palace was dimly lit and quiet. Guanji had been resting in her room without any unusual movements. It wasn't until the middle of the night that she quietly got up and took out a black fox mask. When she put on the mask, her whole body became invisible, completely disappearing into the darkness. Then she quietly flew out of the general's palace, crossed the dark night sky, and flew out of Falling Star Valley. She didn't disturb anyone, and after leaving Falling Star Valley, she flew east. After an entire hour, she flew for thousands of miles before landing on a barren mountain. After landing on the top of the mountain, she cautiously observed her surroundings, and after making sure no one was following her, she sneaked into the mountain. Inside the mountain there was a man-made cave about 10 feet in radius. The walls were inlaid with pearls and gems, and the floor was covered with white jade. Deep in the cave there was a wide jade bed covered with luxurious fox and moon fox furs. A beautiful woman with an explosive figure and a curvaceous figure was currently resting on a jade bed with her eyes closed. This woman wore a 10-foot-long golden dress and a 2-foot-tall luxurious crown on her head, which was studded with rare gems. Her beautiful face was soul-stirring, like a young girl in her 20s, but the seductive aura she exuded was more mature and charming than any other woman. Guanji was already a flirtatious beauty, but compared to this woman, she paled in comparison. Both were charming and moving, but this woman was completely natural without a trace. Chapter 21:17. When Guanji entered the cave, the woman in the golden dress was resting with her eyes closed. Her beautiful face, seductive aura, and languid posture made it impossible for anyone to extricate themselves from it. Guanji arrived in front of the jade bed and respectfully knelt on the ground, her palms flat as she saluted. "Greetings, Your Majesty." Without a doubt, the beautiful woman lying on the jade bed was the queen of the Cha Nu tribe. Hearing Guanji's voice, she didn't open her eyes and continued to lie on her side, revealing her beautiful curves. "Guanji, what's the result?" She gently opened her cherry lips and asked in a soft voice. This kind of voice and emphasis had a natural charm to it. No matter who heard it, they wouldn't feel disgusted. Guanji respectfully bowed her head and answered truthfully, "Reporting to Your Majesty, as the rumor said before, Ji Tianqing really did come to Falling Star Valley 2 days ago. Her Majesty instructed Guanji to keep everything confidential, and not report to him face to face unless there is something important. Therefore, in order not to arouse his suspicion, Guanji endured for 2 days before reporting." The queen slowly turned over, still lying on her side, her right hand supporting her cheek as she looked deeply at Guanji and asked, "Du Changchang has arranged for you to be Ji Tianqing's personal maid. You should have had a lot of contact with him these past 2 days. Have you ever had any intimate moments with him?" For some reason, the queen's tone was a bit strange and her eyes were quite cold, with a trace of hatred hidden deep within them. Guanji still had her head lowered so she couldn't see the queen's expression. She gently shook her head and said regretfully, "Reporting to Your Majesty, it didn't happen. This subordinate tried to use my charm technique to seduce him, but he saw through this subordinate's identity and origin at a glance and sternly refused. He also said that he despised my tribe's charm technique the most." Hearing Guanji's answer, the Empress's eyes flashed with relief. The corners of her mouth rose slightly, forming a playful smile as she said in a low voice, "So it really is him." Guanji was stunned for a moment, then asked in disbelief, "Your Majesty, you mean Ji Tianqing is the Kenshin from 1,000 years ago?" The Empress nodded slightly and said angrily, "There was news from the celestial face pass that Xie Wudao turned pale with fright when he saw Ji Tianqing. He called out for his teacher and almost knelt down to greet him." This news had long been spread, causing endless discussions in the martial arts world. Before this, I didn't dare to confirm whether the news was true. After all, that bastard had been dead for 1,000 years. But now that I've heard what you've said, I'm completely certain that he's Kenshin. Guanji was silent for a moment, then nodded. This subordinate has carefully thought about it and feels that it should be him. After all, Ji Tianqing is too young. It's impossible for him to know about the existence of my clan, let alone meet our descendants. But when he saw this subordinate, he immediately recognized this subordinate as a member of the Cha Nu tribe, and even mentioned this subordinate's bewitching technique. The Empress sneered and said, "That's right. My tribe's bewitching technique and soul-sucking power are unparalleled in the world. Not to mention men, even the monster race, demon race, or other races, as long as they are male, no one can resist it. But he rejected you without any hesitation, and even disdained my tribe's bewitching technique. Only he would be so unromantic like a dead tree. Guanji, tell me, how can there be a cat in this world that doesn't steal fish? How can there be a man who isn't lustful?" Guanji thought seriously for a moment, then shook her head. The Empress sneered and said in a resentful tone, "But he's a freak, so self-disciplined that it makes one's hair stand on end. Sometimes this Empress even thinks that he doesn't like women but men?" Guanji shook her head again. Du Changchang also arranged many young male guards for him. Some were handsome, some were masculine, and some were feminine. It could be said that they all had their own characteristics. But when he saw those male guards, he flew into a rage and ordered his subordinates to withdraw the guards. He also said that if Du Changchang acted on his own again, he would punish him. The Empress suddenly frowned and whispered angrily, "Such a ruthless person should have died 1,000 years ago. Why did he appear again? The heavens are simply blind." Guanji was silent for a while, not knowing how to respond. The Empress gradually suppressed her anger and resentment and waved her hand. "Since Ji Tianqing has seen through your identity, it is very likely that he will suspect you. You shouldn't take too long to avoid being discovered by him. Immediately go to Falling Star Valley. If he has any news or movements, you don't need to report it in person, just send a message in secret." Guanji cupped his hands in obeisance. "Your Majesty, please rest assured. From Ji Tianqing's previous actions, it is clear that he is carrying a heavy responsibility and only wants to expel the demon race army as soon as possible. He has already been in Falling Star Valley for 2 days, and in 2 or 3 days at most, he will definitely lead the army to battle. At that time, Your Majesty will have the opportunity to act." The Empress suddenly sneered and said in a joking tone, "Yes, this Empress can't wait. This Empress really wants to see what kind of expression he will have when he sees this Empress again." The humiliation he inflicted on this Empress made this Empress a laughingstock for 300 or 400 years. How can this Empress forget this hatred? This time, this Empress will pay him back double and wash away the shame. This Empress will make him kneel at my feet and lick my toes. Ha ha ha. At the end of her speech, the Empress raised her head and laughed proudly, her body trembling and rippling. Guanji didn't stay any longer and bowed to her. "May Your Majesty's wish be fulfilled. This subordinate will take his leave." Then she turned and left the cave, quickly disappearing into the night. The cave returned to silence. Empress Tantai lay on the bed with her eyes closed and whispered to herself, "Everyone knows that the second demon Saint Song Yu is overseeing the battlefield of Qiyang Empire. Almost everyone thinks that Song Yu is in the demon race camp outside Heavenly Wolf Pass. But this Empress is very clear that Song Yu is not there at all, but in the camp outside Falling Star Valley. Ji Tianqing is so eager for quick success. Once he goes to battle, he will encounter Song Yu. No matter how much of a genius he is definitely not Song Yu's opponent, and he will definitely return in defeat. He will be seriously injured and retreat in defeat, and his invincible legend will come to an end. At that time, this empress will humiliate him. I really want to see what kind of expression he will have when the time comes. About half an hour later, Guanji quietly returned to Falling Star Valley without attracting anyone's attention. Seeing that everything in the commander's palace was as usual and there was nothing unusual, she rested at ease. Early the next morning, Ji Tianqing gathered more than 20 generals and discussed matters in the study. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.